We have Dr. R.N. Singh from Global Rescue Foundation, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Singh, and we also have Manoj Kumar Saxena sir and Dr. Sharma from ASI. And all the participants who have come from outside, also for our students who have joined from our campus. So this, just a very brief idea about this workshop, what we started. Uh, it's basically started from last, I will say around 4 to 5 months back, when there is a need, basically, and a thought came that we being the Uttarakhand hill state, and we do have a lot of hill heritage, which is basically being located. But because of this, lot of disasters which are happening, be it the earthquake, be it the landslides, so there are hill heritage safety and the conservation of those museums and all those are important. So from that perspective, we started talking to NDMA, the National Disaster Management Authority, along with Global Rescue Foundation. So Dr. R.N. Singh, basically, we started talking and to think about. So the idea of this workshop is basically that we will be talking about what are the different practices are there to safeguard the hill heritage, the museums, and the old buildings which we have in our state. So this is the brief background of the workshop, what we will be talking about 2 days. Professor Ram Satish is going to brief you more in detail about the workshop. But with this inaugural words, basically we would like to invite and welcome everyone from inside IIT Roorkee, plus also from outside IIT Roorkee campus, who are come from Delhi and other parts of the country, to welcome to our beautiful campus on IIT Roorkee. You will see a lot of activities going to happening on campus. So we would like to request you to move around in the campus and see the beautiful campus and the activities which are happening. So we would also like to welcome all our dignitaries, the experts who will be joining shortly also, online also, to share their thoughts. So we have gathered people from ASI, we have also have people from the conservation, the practicing people who will be talking and sharing their experience in this 2-day workshop. So with this small background, I would like to welcome everyone to join for this 2-day workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I request Professor Ramsati Pasupuleti to give a brief introduction about this workshop.
Yeah, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Deblina. So, thank you, Sumit, for sir. So, I'm going to introduce you to the 2-day workshop and what are the events we have planned, actually. So, in fact, this has been a meticulous planning. We have been, me and Sumit and Harshit, we have been coordinating with Dr. R.N. Singh, also how really it could be worked out, both bringing the practice sector and the policy sector and the academic sector onto the one platform. And that is what here we are today with all the aspects coming in one platform. So our first day, we will start with the keynote sessions with the speakers, Sri O.P. Singh, former DG NDRF, CSIF, UP Police, and Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Singh, Chief Security Officer, National Museum, Janpath, and which will be followed up with the plenary session and focused on the disaster management of hill heritage sites in India, with the panelists of Dr. R.N. Singh and Sri Manoj Kumar Saxena and other participants. And this is the program before the lunch and post-lunch. So what we actually planned was we want to give the participants a kind of hands-on experience of certain audit processes and focusing on a participatory workshop on hill heritage at risk. And of course, here we have identified some 3 sites here within the campus which are dating back to the colonial era, and we'll be introducing you to certain techniques of how to map the condition assessments and other things like that. And so we'll be dividing into groups and we'll be going around, and some of the mentors from the practice also will be accompanying you to to guide you further how to do this particular study. And by evening, all the participants will come back and they can come and give some preliminary presentations. So that is the kind of hands-on workshop which we thought of doing it in the post-afternoon. And in the second day, we have in the morning session, we are having a session on best practices by museum and heritage site managers. We have two speakers for that, Dr. Krishan Bihari Sharma, ASI Jageshwar Museum, ASI Dehradun Circle, and also Sri Manoj Kumar Saxena, Superintending Archaeologist, ASI Dehradun Circle, and also Dr. Aryan Singh, Global Rescue Foundation. So this is a kind of you can interact with various challenges, what they're actually facing by, and in that way, we can also learn about the best practices, what they're able to adopt. So after that, again, we are, after the tea break, we are introducing with another group hands-on exercise of preparing a kind of SOPs. And here we are also coming up with some kind of technique of a kind of Yanman-Geki chart. So it's a kind of technique where different groups come together on one table and discuss certain aspects of particular issue and prepare certain SOPs. So, and this is how, and following those deliberations, post-lunch, we'll be having a group presentation. So that's actually the concluding part of the workshop. So this is how, and then we have the valedictory function, which is followed up with that. And today we have, before the high tea, we'll be inaugurating a photography exhibition. And we have floated a competition, photography competition within the campus, so that many students have traveled across and they might have documented certain aspects. So that competition will be open very soon. And we'll be having a group photograph also after this, yeah, after director's search and after this inaugural session. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I request Professor K.K. Pant, Honorable Director, IIT Roorkee, to address the gathering and encourage our participants with your insightful words.
Thank you, and very good morning to all of you. Professor Sen, Professor Ram Satish, distinguished personalities who are sitting on the dais, and some of them have to join, Professor O.P. Singh and Professor Kamal Kishore. So, Professor Sen also, and I could see a couple of invited guests from other departments, and the 3 departments who are involved in this activity, my dear researcher scholars who are from this campus, and all the participants who have come all over the India, I hope not from the world, so within India. So warm welcome, and Devbhumi Uttarakhand mein aapka swagat hai. All of you know about what kind of disasters Uttarakhand faces off and on, which starts from landslides, which starts from cloud busting, which starts from several other, what you see, sometimes the floods, and then sometimes because of the natural, climate change, earthquakes and all these things. Lot of R&D are being done, but most of the time you see, when the incident happens, we initiate, we try to rush. We have the droughts in several parts of the country. We have floods. Every year flood comes, and we just send the rescue team from the NDRF, But before that, how the precautions are to be taken in order to minimize these kind of risks, that's very important. Sometimes these are related to the natural, which is disturbing because of our ecological disbalance, and our again the Center of Excellence on Disaster Management team and the different departments, they are working on different directions to sense them, So sensors are being developed that if some kind of these, some intuition comes because of the whatever the change is happening under the earth crust, this can be identified, say, just for earthquake. Same thing for cloud busting also. Presently, we don't have any solution for these kind of disasters, but I think we need to find out. Thermodynamically, the solutions are there, but practically, if the cloud burst happens, how to control that, what kind of precautions are to be taken. We need to aware about society. That's very important, because you know that Uttarakhand is relatively, we want that Uttarakhand should be economically strong, right? And there should be less, right, escape of our local citizens from Uttarakhand, right, to other part of the country. So that, because that will happen when we provide them a complete security, right, in terms of the security economically, security in terms of the food, security in terms of energy, and economically sustainable. So that's what the new education policy always talks about, that how to make the entire environment sustainable, how to make the ecological system sustainable. So this kind of conferences, right, where I would like to see more and more practical knowledge instead of the bouquets, right? That's very important, that we should know when fire, right, happens, how to control that. That is the post-disaster management. But I want that, why this fire is happening, if we have some chemical factory, right, what kind of safety measures are to be taken? We should take a prior precaution for all this. And you know that we have a large number of museums, we have large number of this kind of pristines, right, large number of these kind of, say, heritage systems in India. And these are, say, some of these are thousands years old, right? So if we are not able to manage our Indian heritage or cultural value through these museums, then again it will be a problem for our next generation. So my suggestion would be that, right, all the time, right, whatever the heritage building, we should look at how to make, right, most of the time you must have seen, there are photographies banned and all this, because they have the impact on this, right, the life of these kind of materials. So we need to study them thoroughly, and I'm sure that the conference will discuss this. And there are many other things also, right, when we talk about the droughts or floods, right, and which are also the acid rain, you know, the Taj Mahal and all these things, right, they have a lot of impact of this, because of this carbon dioxide into the environment, sulfur dioxide into the environment, and then the pH of water change, and because of that, this building, right, the corrodes, right, so how to make these, right, corrosion proof, or how can we mitigate these kind of problems? I think it is the role of every individual and citizen, right? And here being IIT, right, we are already 175 years old institute. It is our responsibility that how can we, because in IIT itself, campus itself, you will have a lot of heritage buildings, you can see them, right? Our James Thompson building itself is 175 plus years old. So we need to look at, right, and there are a lot of, right, issues with this building also, right? So we need, that time you can see that even now these are stable, but most of the time the new buildings are not that much stable, right? So the architect and all these things, right, that's why I think Department of Archaeology and Planning is doing a lot of work in these areas, right, how to make these heritage buildings, right, more and more stronger. And when the new buildings are being designed, how to get a thought on this design. So our new research scholars, right, that's why I say that this is a multidisciplinary challenge, right? And all branches of science and engineering, like say chemistry is there, then architecture and planning is there, disaster management is there, and several other departments like earthquake, water resource development, all these things should also join the team and find a solution for these kind of, right, problems. So friends, with these short words, I wish you all the best. And I could see the book written by Professor Arun Singh. It's a very nice the information which has been given in this book. I really like that. I also congratulate the entire team, our coordinator, Professor Sumit Sen, Professor Ram Satish, Professor Harshita Lakra, and Professor Arun Singh, right, and other student member research scholars who have contributed for this conference. So wish you all the best, and I am sure that you will love to join these sessions, which are in 2 days with 7 speakers and several other practical sessions, and also the IIT Roorkee's campus flora and fauna. Enjoy that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for your encouraging words. Now I'd like request everyone to come forward for a group photograph. Everyone,
Even from this side.
okay, okay.
Because it will be easier. We will sit.
2023 in
No, no, no. It's such an important subject, attracting the experts, professionals, and delegates all over the country. And hosting this workshop, jointly organized by the Center of Excellence in Disaster Mitigation and Management, IIT Roorkee, in collaboration with Global Rescue Foundation, headed by Mr. R.N. Singh, with support from National Disaster Management Authority, perhaps underscores the recognition of the fact that disaster resilience infrastructure is not a personal choice, but a collective imperative. Friends, in a rapidly changing and very unpredictable world, with very little operational template to fall back upon, experts and leaders of the disaster management domain, they are doing extremely useful work and continuously watching out for evolving risks, for learnings and resources from their experiences. Mr. Kamal Kishore, who is Member Secretary of the NDMA, incidentally, he's not here, but he's one of the experts, Mr. R.N. Singh, Mr. Professor Sumit Sen, all these people, they have done a lot, and we must owe our allegiance as well as to gratefulness to these people. I have worked in NDRF as Director General and Chief of the Force for nearly 2 years, and with my experience of heading the NDRF in almost 8 to 9 mega disasters, including the Nepal disaster of 2015, I'm of the opinion that the disaster response is a very, very professional subject which needs to be handled very professionally. Subsequently, my experience in CISF, as head of the CISF, gave me a different insight. In fact, the museums and heritage safety, some of them have been protected by Central Industrial Security Force, to name a few like Red Fort, Victoria Memorial of Calcutta, Statue of Unity of Gujarat, Indian museums, national museums, and Salarjung museums. All these have been protected security-wise by Central Industrial Security Force. So, disaster is something which is very, very important these days. And as I speak up, we would know the relevance of such domain in our practical day-to-day life. India is a country in which millions of people live with the possibility of being exposed to a range of natural disasters. And they live in riverbeds, they live in dry and drought-affected communities, terrains, they live on coasts that are getting eroded and exposed to storms on hillocks that might get flattened now and then, or cities built up, leaving no space to storm water to drain out. For many people living in such environments, natural disasters turn into a disaster in a big way. Often such natural disasters are made worse by human intervention, as we have seen in many cases. In the last couple of years, many changes have taken place in the field of disaster management. India has now, fortunately, and very consciously, a law, a policy, as well as national, state, and district level administrations set up to deal with disasters. And that is how the concept of National Disaster Management Authority has come into being. There are government, civil societies, and humanitarian initiatives to fine-tune the system to deal with the disasters, and DRR, Disaster Risk Reduction, about which we'll be talking in this conference, has become a household name in development parlance. Psychosocial impacts are getting more attention now, and the vision with which we are working is that of a disaster resilient India, an India in which each and every one will be suitably aware, sensitized, and trained. But the moot question is India disaster response ready? These days, so many things are happening. When it rains, cities drown, and miseries pile. Life comes to a tipping halt. The city looks helpless in the face of natural disasters. So the question is, what is the way forward? What are the lessons for the policymakers? What are the lessons for communities? And what are the lessons for disaster managers or the field practitioners? There are so many questions on building resilience. There are questions on localizing preparedness and response during disasters. And what kind of capacities do we need to build? And how and why can these capabilities of the stakeholders be used to strengthen the capacities at a local level? All these need a national mission. As we have Swachh Bharat, similarly, we need to have very, very robust disaster resilient India. Now coming back to the topic which is disaster risk reduction on museum and heritage safety, particularly in the areas where we are living, Himalayan region. Friends, I would like to start with as to what constitutes a heritage. And before that, I would like to just remind you that in a recent study, particularly with reference to the Himalayan region, a study conducted by a number of scholars from different universities of United Kingdom, they say that populations in high mountainous Asia, a region stretching from Hindu Kush to eastern Himalayas, are the most exposed. In fact, India and Pakistan make up 1/3 of the total number of people globally exposed to glacial lake outbursts floods, GLOF. And around 3 million population in India and around 2 million population in Pakistan, they are exposed to such threats. And around 15 million people across the world face the risk of sudden and deadly flooding from glacial lakes. And these 4 nations which are deadly exposed are India, Pakistan, China, and Peru. So you can see the gravity of the whole situations. There is another scientist who recently said that in the Himalayan region, stretching from Jammu and Kashmir to Arunachal Pradesh, an earthquake of 8+ magnitude is going to happen. When it will happen, nobody knows. And the damage depends on multiple factors: population density, buildings, mountains or plains, and quality of constructions. And Himalayan region, as we all know, that it has already witnessed 4 great earthquakes, including Kumayu earthquake of 1720 and Garhwal earthquake of 1803. So this is the kind of scenario in which we have to discuss the disaster risk reductions programs or the concept on museums and heritage sites in Himalayan region. Now, to begin with, heritage is much more than the preservation of old buildings and sites. In fact, what we eat, how we dance, how we mourn the dead, what we sing, and how we love, these are all practices that can sustain us despite all sorts of onslaughts. And how this is represented and how represents it become key in the conversation after catastrophe. So heritage is a living and dynamic concept interwoven with peoples and the places. It is an expression of cultural diversity and of different modalities of artistic creation, artistic production, artistic dissemination, distribution, and enjoyment. And as per the UNESCO definition, heritage encompasses tangible objects such as monuments and historic buildings, movable and immovable paintings, sculptures, cave dwellings, underwater heritage, and so on and so forth. And also cultural landscapes in the rural and urban settings or context. We have in India some of the provisions, legal provisions, to back up these monuments and buildings. For example, Article 49 of our Constitution protects the built heritage by saying that it is the obligation of the state to protect every monument, Article 49 of the Constitution, whereas Article 51A says the duty of every citizen to value and preserve rich heritage of our composite culture is there in the Constitution. And we also amended in 2010 a provision which provided for constitution of National Monument Authority charged with grading and classifying of potential monuments and areas. So we all know that heritage and museums are confronted with various kinds of disasters, especially in the areas prone to natural hazards such as floods, fires, earthquake, etc. And we have also seen in our history that widespread damage caused to the heritage sites due to various earthquakes, historic towns like Bam, Iran, from 2003 earthquake, South Asia earthquake of 2005 in Pakistan and other areas. They are all fresh in our memories. Besides, we have also seen that wars and terrorism have also been great man-made sources of destruction of heritage in the past. We still see in case of Ukraine and Russia war that how many historical sites have been damaged and destroyed completely. We have also seen that the historic towns of Palestine, historic towns of Bamiyan Buddhas in Afghanistan, and precious heritage properties in Iraq have been destroyed because of terrorism and because of war. So risks to cultural heritage, be it the heritage safety or the museum, are not only limited to monuments, but also extend to urban areas. The examples that I gave belong to the urban areas in which these monuments are located historically and got engulfed by the urbanization process. Now coming back to the Himalayan region, they form a dynamic changing landscape, the product of the millions of years of crystals shortening. They carry in their bowels immense tectonic stresses. It is evident that contrasting tectonic and climatic agenda make this range what it is. And the Himalayan mountainous region is the world's newest, fastest, and the most enormous crumpled mountainous range. And I have seen in case of Nepal earthquake in 2015 that almost 80% of the temples and historic structures in both Bhaktapur, those who are familiar with Nepal, they know Bhaktapur, so important a historical place, and Kathmandu Darbar Square have been damaged and destroyed completely, 80% of them. Earthquake also destroyed 9-story Dharhara Tower, a tower which was so famous in pre-earthquake era, one of the oldest Buddhist monuments in the Himalayas. So risks to heritage and museums are not only limited to monuments, but also extend to urban areas. Now, if you look at the risks to all these sites, heritage sites, as well as the museums, you may feel that they may all stem from exposure to one or many hazards and other determinants. Therefore, it is important for all of us to incorporate specific actions and strategies for specific kinds of hazards, and at the same time facilitate a holistic understanding of risks to heritage from multiple hazards. If you look at the list of hazards, you'd find that there are so many hazards which can be so important and specific. For example, temperature, relative humidity, precipitation in storms, seismic stability, rivers and lakes, coastal sites, gradient and drainage, all these are the risks or these are the hazards. Flora and fauna, access, commercial industrial hazards. For me, safety and security, being a police officer and where the CISF protects these monuments, building structures and essential services, the kind of communication one needs to have when the emergency or the disaster takes place. So these are the examples of the lists of the hazards where you have to be very, very particular. And while you are writing your plan, then you have to be very specific about all these so that you can make a very robust plan for that. And understanding risks, or for that matter, understanding risks, hazards, in museums and heritage, they are not only important, in fact, they are very, very important from the DRR point of view also. And once you are asking or you are writing something about disaster risk reduction, you have to factor like location of the site, location of the museum, designing and construction of the building, safety and security considerations, the gate, doors, windows, everything had to be factored in, lighting conditions, ease of functioning and maneuvering, medical care for the staff and visitors, and fire preventive mechanism. So the roles of the agencies, apart from the hazards that you enumerate, the roles of the agencies involved have to be specifically charted out. Expert management group, or the construction company, well-trained safety and security task force, or electric department for ensuring uninterrupted power supply, or the hospitals for immediate evacuations, and importance of training, that how this capacity building can be increased. I remember in NDRF, in National Disaster Response Force, when we were working, the main question was how to improve the capacity building. And the capacity building is something which we lack in the entire country. We needed to increase the capacity building of the state disaster management forces. We needed to increase the capacity building of all the stakeholders. And that is why the schools, colleges, different professional groups, gram sabhas, panchayats, volunteers from different areas, masons, electricians, teachers, the people working in different departments of the government, they all needed to be given a different kind of capacity building exercises. And that is what it is called, the community awareness program, where you go to the field, try to bring all the stakeholders together, give them the mock drill, give them the training about how do you react when you have to react when the disaster really happens. So the importance of training cannot be undermined. The security staff and security drills, motivating the staff in such a scenario, the community engagement. So all these things need to be factored in while you're talking about disaster risk reduction. Now friends, the impacts of disasters on museums for the last few years within our country has been particularly severe. As I said, in 2014, floods in J&K that damaged the buildings and collections of Sri Pratap Singh Museum in Srinagar extensively. The archive buildings at Rajkot and Junagadh and the museum and library buildings in Bhuj suffered damages in 2001 earthquake of Gujarat. And some of the specific challenges that disaster risk management in museums relate to, that is vulnerability of objects and collections, about which I just spoke, vulnerability of historical structures, and vulnerability of human-induced activities such as arson, thefts, etc. Though they do not come under the disaster domain, but they are also very, very vulnerable when some fire takes place or the theft takes place of some precious articles. There are many more challenges also. Therefore, when you approach the DRR in a museum, that should include that you have the elimination and prevention of hazard. You need to mitigate of the impact of such hazards, and prioritization of the action. How you prioritize the entire action-oriented plan. You cannot take 100% actions when the disaster takes place. So you need to prioritize which are the subjects, which are the articles, which are the items need to be taken care of first when such a massive disaster takes place. The context, site, building, and infrastructure should be factored in our DRR activities. And like other institutions, museum test their own infrastructural setup. Buildings, sites, and contexts should meet the highest standard of risk mitigation and reduction. In fact, many museums are specifically designed to face the natural disasters endemic to their locations. And I have taken the example from a foreign country, the Whitney Museum of American Art, one of the most flood resilient structures in New York, with a 15,500-pound floor door devised by the same engineers who designed watertight latches on US Navy's destroyer. So the kind of collaborations between the military and the museum, you can see the kind of structural designs. Similarly, in Los Angeles, in Getty Center, it has a 1 million-gallon water tank and on-air infrastructure system that forces air and smoke out of the galleries while maintaining the temperature and humidity levels necessary to protect the artwork. Similarly, security and management. When you're talking of all these, the security of the museum, security of the heritage site, and the management becomes very, very important. Collection, display, and storage management require address while planning for risk reduction and mitigations. Friends, what I have told you is probably very small things in comparison to the exhaustive list that you can think of. And therefore, the museum should be carried out detailed risk assessment exercises with inputs from various experts and managements. And there is, last the list, there is a need for mainstreaming the museum safety concerns and heritage concerns in the whole overall comprehensive disaster risk management plan. To conclude, I must say that we have to do many things in order to have the DRR provisions and the DRR concept ingrained in museum and heritage site, and particularly in area which is so prone to natural disasters, the Himalayan regions. We need to ensure museums and heritage sites, they are properly protected through effective planning. There should be disaster preparedness and response through awareness programs and through public education. How museums educate the people and how they tell about the historical things, that is also very important. So it's a two-way plan. You not only get benefited by the museums, museums also benefit the society at large and the participants. And we participate in regular training and drills in disaster response force. I, being a response man, I have always felt that of the circle of disaster management plan, whether you talk of prevention, whether you talk of mitigation, it's this response which becomes very, very important for the time being, unless you have a very effective response model. And that is why the National Disaster Response Force becomes a very premier organization, standalone organizations, which has a technological response, which has a timely response, and which is also terrain-specific response apart from the mission-specific response. And we have seen various, recently you might have read about NDRF role in Turkey and Syria, where they could not save so much of precious life, but certainly where you have the more than 70,000 people being lost, at least there was some kind of contribution by the NDRF to the people's life and properties. Similarly, in Nepal earthquake in 2014, we could save 11 live victims out of 17, and it was globally recognized and appreciated by United Nations. There were 74 countries, 34 teams, and out of that, we were not so internationally trained, but still we could make a contribution, and we were almost on the top every time. We were working day in and day out. And on the first day, on 25th of April 2015, in the night operation, we could save 7 live victims in our first operation, which was a great achievement. So NDRF has been a premier force, and it has been expanding now with 16 battalions all over the country. We are imparting training to all the stakeholders, be it the state level stakeholders or the NGOs or the civil society, and trying to build up and trying to increase the capacity building of the various stakeholders. The museum should also ensure that their programs, their response and DRR plans should be included in the district preparedness and response plan, and the needs of the local communities and other stakeholders should be also at the heart of their response. So this is all I have to say. Friends, disaster is something which is there for all the times to come, and the consciousness and the awareness of disaster is increasing day in and day out. The schools, colleges, universities are getting training, they're getting awareness through educational programs about disaster. Fortunately, our country, ever since we had Bhuj earthquake of 2001 and the tsunami of 2004, we had a very national level deliberations, and we enacted a law in 2005. We had national institutions like National Disaster Management Authority, National Disaster Response Force, National Institute of Disaster Management. We have the similar structures at the state level. And not only the institution places, not only that they have been designed in the legal framework of the country, but a lot of consciousness has come to the stakeholders, which is a good thing for a country like ours, which is so prone to disasters of various kinds, be it earthquake, or cyclones, or tsunamis, or floods. So the country requires a great consciousness on part of all of us to think and respond in times of emergency. In the end, all I can say is that knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shri O.P. Singh ji. Before we go on to the second keynote speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to open this discussion with our students. If there is any burning caution you think, okay, what Shri O.P. Singh ji has shared. So may I request all, if there is any question coming out from the audience. Just to start with myself, but I think maybe the students will require someone to lead. So, sir, basically, like when you have dealt with lots of disaster, and specifically what you shared about the urban disasters, which also have the museums and the heritage sites. So the question here is like, okay, what is the, when you talk about disaster risk management plans towards museums and heritage, but what is the challenge normally when a battalion goes and starts helping? What is the major challenge you normally see, which is missing out right now?
Right. You know, I can talk specifically from NDRF point of view, because they are the ones who reach this spot, if not immediately, at least after a certain gap. You know, there has to be someone who is known to the whole plan. If you make a plan, disaster management plan, anywhere, of any institution, of any building or any office, the first thing is that everyone should know about it. What happens is that most of the people, they do not know about it. They do not know whether the plan exists or not. The plan for prevention, the plan for mitigation, the plan for response, each and every one of us has a designated role. And if anything goes wrong, suppose a disaster takes place, it becomes we are duty bound to perform certain roles and responsibilities. So in a museum or in a heritage site, particularly in a museum, when the museum has a plan, and I'm sure that all these plans are there. My friend Nakul is here. He had made a plan in Bangalore about the fire plan. Imagine such an important thing, fire. The most neglected one. We talk of earthquake, we talk of floods, we talk of cyclones or tsunami, but we hardly think of fire. Fire is the most important object where you can, one of the most important hazards. So each and every building or an office or an institution should have a plan. And the plan should be known not only to the people who are the stakeholders or who are the office workers, the staff, but it should be rehearsed very regularly. And that is why we have the process of mock drills. I remember when I was DG CISF, I wrote to all the PSUs, because most of the PSUs were being protected and guarded by Central Industrial Security Force. And I insisted upon them that you must have a mock drill very regularly. The fact that I had headed both the organizations, NDRF and CISF, I had a double advantage of impressing upon the people that you have a combined exercise. So NDRF used to be sent there to a PSU, say for example in Coal India or NTPC or ONGC, and they used to have the mock drill. And mind it, mock drills are rarely done. If you do not have a regular mock drill or the rehearsals, even in the communities, say for example, you go to a village, you go to a coastline area, you go to a flood prone area, the people do not know. And even if you have the resources, that is why I say that it's not saying alone is important. Willing is not enough. You must do it. And the doing is what you do it regularly with practice. You may have boats. For example, you know, when I was dealing with 2014 Srinagar flood, that was, I joined on 1st of September 2014 as DG NDRF, and 4th of September the Prime Minister went there and I had to accompany him, and the flood came on 5th and 6th of September. And there were so many things which needed to be brought from outside. And there was a question that as to why don't we have inventory for these people at every place? Why do we need tents? Why do we need foodstuff? Why do we need essential items from outside? Each and every place should be self-sufficient and should be capable of rendering and capable of providing and imparting such things. So that is how you fight disaster. Fighting disaster is not a one-day affair. It's a continuous dynamic process. And that is why the consciousness, the willingness to act, and the fact that you are well-trained to do that, that really changes the whole scenario.
Thank you, sir. And I think because we are running short of the time also, so we would like to thank again Shri O.P. Singh sir for sharing his thoughts and his experiences. And we would like to have audience to, if you want to interact with him, you can interact during the lunchtime. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I request Professor Ramsatish Pasupuleti to kindly present a token of appreciation to Shri O.P. Singh ji for his valuable contribution.
Moving on to the next session, Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Singh, Chief Security Officer, National Museum, Janpath, India, to share your insight on the theme of this session. Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Singh is a trained archaeologist, museologist, born in a family of freedom fighter. He belongs to the first batch of Archaeology of India. He obtained BA History from Bhagalpur University, MA with a specialization in the field of archaeology from Patna University, and PhD from Jamia Millia Islamia University. He has been the curator, co-curator, co-coordinator, planner and conceptualizer for more than 150 exhibitions for the National Museum, including Buddhist Treasure in the NM, Buddhist Artist of India, Archaeology of Chile, Jewels of India. Government of India deputed him as an expert to Singapore, Japan, Germany, and various other countries to organize exhibition and lectures. He has also worked with Intact and India Museum Kolkata. He participated in various archaeological excavations such as Maner, Thanesar, Bahari, and various archaeological sites and monuments. We welcome you, sir, with a huge round of applause. Thank you.
धन्यवाद. I will be bilingual. मेरा यह मानना है कि दिल की बात दिल तक जानी चाहिए. So I am working with the National Museum for last 33 years. As an archaeologist, I started my career as an archaeologist. But when the first speaker, Sri O.P. Singh, Dr. O.P. Singh ji, spoken, I was speechless. I thought, why should I will speak? He has touched every damn part of the subject and very minutely given insight to the subject. तब मुझे लगा कि मुझे क्यों बोलना चाहिए और इसलिए बोलना चाहिए कि मैं आपके साथ म्यूज़ियम की बात करूंगा. I will talk about the museum. Just within I have more slides, but I will give you that first we should understand what is a museum. The first slide you are seeing, मैंने जानबूझकर next back. The very first slide, it is a monument, and monument turned into the educational center as well as the museum, and it is a Bikram Sila. Have you heard about that? We have 3-4 universities, Taxilas, Nalanda, and Bikram Sila. It is one of that. And 3 figure you have seen, it is, you might be seeing that why these pictures are there. One is of mine, another one is of Dr. Sefalika Avasthi, and the lower part is Rabia Qureshi. I have purposely, that is generally not done in the title, but I have purposely done it because we are associated with the disaster management for long. Sefalika is working in Kutch and Bhuj area. She has documented every damn thing which was damaged due to disaster. And Rabia Qureshi is a conservator and curator in SPS Museum. And she has given me few slides, which I will show you, how our negligence have been taken part of that. मैं इसलिए भी बोलता हूँ कि हमारी अज्ञानता जो है डिसास्टर का मूल कारण है. आपदा का मूल कारण हमारी अज्ञानता है. Our incapability to understand is the root cause of this disaster. So that is what, in the experiences, we must look into these parts, and practically we should gauge it, not theoretically. Feel it. और ये feeling तब आती है, इसलिए मैंने पहला जो स्लाइड रखा है वो 2-3 मिनट में उसी में खा लेता हूँ आपका. पहला स्लाइड ही मैंने रखा है कि it is perfect example of disaster of both kind, that is natural and human. One Khilji came and he burned the entire university. That is human disaster. One thing, then you, the local people, have stolen the monuments, artifacts, and kept it like this. So you have 2 types of disaster, and you are managing the heritage. And you must know that culture and heritage is the basic of your basic instinct for being. आपके होने के वजूद को दर्शाता है अगर आपकी संस्कृति आपके साथ है. और संस्कृति कहाँ दिखाई पड़ती? Where you see this culture and heritage, that is your heritage and museums. So in brief, it is ICOM, International Council of Museums, definition about the museum. You must know. If we talk about the museum, first identify what is a museum. अगर आप अपने को जान लेते हैं, तब आप जो है परफेक्ट टेलरिंग करते हैं कि आपको आपका सूट या आपका कुर्ता, आपका जीन्स कैसा होगा. हमारी कमर अगर 32 इंच की है और 36 इंच का पहन लें या 24 इंच का ले आए तो वो फिट नहीं करेगा. तो इसका मतलब है कि we must know the museum were first. And what is a museum? Definition of the museum? So a museum is a non-profit permanent institution in the service of society and its development, development open to the public. Open to the public. What I will just draw your attention on the highlights. Open to the public, which acquires, conserves, researches, communicates, and exhibits the tangible and intangible heritage of the humanity in its environment for the purpose of education, study, and enjoyment. For what? Education, study and enjoyment. If you know this, then you will get attached. और हमारे सिद्धांत में we have the philosophy called sense of belongingness. Until or unless you feel belonged, you will not get attached with that. और आपका तारितम उससे स्थापित नहीं होता है. If you don't get attached with, then you don't care for that. और मैं उसका उदाहरण देता हूँ. और हमारे यहाँ दिल्ली में काफ़ी दिनों से रहा. दिल्ली में एक कहावत है कि फ़र्क पैंदा है. क्या फ़र्क पड़ता है? What makes difference? पड़ता है. अगर आप सोचिएगा, हम लोग एक दूरदर्शन का कार्यक्रम कर रहे थे. वी आर हैविंग द नेशनल डिबेट ऑन द दूरदर्शन, लाइव डिबेट, एंड द एंकर आस्क कि अगर कुछ आपदा तुरंत हो जाती है तो आपका रिस्पांस क्या होगा. 3 लोग हम लोग बैठे थे. मैं था, आर.एन. सिंह जी थे, कमल किशोर जी थे. आर.एन. सिंह जी ने कहा कि मेरी रिस्पांस होता है प्रिपेयर्डनेस. वी शुड हैव टू बी प्रिपेयर्ड फॉर दैट. मेरा आंसर था कि मेरा रिस्पांस है कि जो पहला व्यक्ति है वही रिस्पांस करेगा. वो देखेगा नहीं कि डायरेक्टर जनरल है कि वो चपरासी है, वो क्यूरेटर है या कंजर्वेटर है, वो सिक्योरिटी वाला है या वो कोई विजिटर है. जो पहला व्यक्ति उस वस्तु के नजदीक है, ही इज द फर्स्ट रिस्पॉन्डर. तो हमें क्या कहना चाहिए? सैनिटाइज करना पड़ेगा लोगों. We have to make aware of. For that, I am standing with you. My purpose is not to give your academic inputs, but just I want to get you aware with the things that you feel it. Is this all the belongs that is known as the heritage, known as the culture, known as the artifacts, known as the objects are yours. Once you feel it is yours, you will be the first responder for that. You will be the first. आप होंगे. आपको कहने की जरूरत नहीं होगी. आपको कहने की जरूरत नहीं होगी. आप खुद ही खड़े हो जाएंगे. और that is why we have for the study and enjoyment, that is the purpose of the museum. But last year, the ICOM has changed its definition of the museum. So it is to be also to be understood, to look into the thing in totality. Now it is, a museum is a non-profit, not for profit. That was non-profitable. Here, not for profit, permanent institution in the service of society that researches, collects, conserves, interprets, and exhibits tangible and intangible heritage, open to the public, accessible and inclusive museums, foster diversity and sustainability. Diversity and sustainability, I draw your attention. Museums foster diversity and sustainability. They operate and communicate ethically, professionally, and within the participation of communities, offering varied experiences for education, enjoyment, reflection, and knowledge sharing. And here, these are the, आप सूत्र पढ़ते हैं, आप विज्ञान के छात्र हैं, आप लोगों में सूत्र होता है और हमारे यहाँ भी सूत्र होता है. जैसे कि मुझे अगर भगवान शिव की पूजा करनी है तो हम एक सूत्र पढ़ लेते हैं कि जो है जवा कुसुम शंका पेंग महाद्युतिम तमोरिंग सर्पापग्न पनोतस्मी दिवाक्रम. ये सूत्र है हमारे लिए. फिर उसकी व्याख्या करते हैं. Like that you have the a plus b square is a square plus 2ac b to b, और आपके कई सिद्धांत हैं, सूत्र हैं. ये सूत्र है. आप इनके शब्दों को देखिएगा. If you look into these, if you get attached with these words, which is narrated in the definition of the museum, you will understand the museum. Once you understand the museum, then you will know the sensitivity and their importance in your life. Mind you, I'm reminding you all that your one object is capable to narrate 1,000 stories. One, for example, we have the UN slogan, sir, propounded by WHO, and everybody is following in the world, in civil society. माँ का दूध सर्वोत्तम, स्तनपान is अमृतपान. The breastfeeding is the best feeding. And we have the example. ये कैसे नारा आ गया? How it come? We have the example in the Indus Valley civilization itself, when a first lady is shown breastfeeding. And that is once, what you think, what you are thinking today, our ancestor 8,500 years and 100 years ago thought it, making the plastic art, so it could be the model. And that is why you need to preserve those things. That is, you have the disaster management. If you lose a tiny breastfeeding mother statue, which is now preserved in the National Museum, you are losing the 8,500 story and the story morality of today, that the breastfeeding is the waste feeding. Yoga, every year you have the on January a day celebrating Yoga Day, International Yoga Day. Where you got this inspiration? From where? Do you know it? Is it only the Patanjali's sutras? No. Before Patanjali propounded the theory of the sutras on yoga, we have the tiny objects, series of tiny objects of the yogic postures, which is unearthed from the Indus Valley civilization, now preserved in the National Museum. So you have the inspiration, and you have the plenty of thoughts behind it. So that is why we have the look into the museums in this way. Here's the museum just, and here's the component. Actually, I am confined to only this. So here's the museum, and you have the museum. Generally, you understand there is a two component. One is structure, one is human resource. One is then if we are thinking about the structure, it is exhibition area, storage. Then we have the, if we are thinking the exhibition, then we have the galleries, we have the spatial exhibitions, जैसे कि अभी special exhibition था अभी photography. And you might have the, if you have the museum, that the permanent display. So both have the different approach and the thinking. Both have needs different kind of management. So we have that thing. Then you have a storage, permanent and temporary. Then you have the human resources, offices you requires, and offices for the curatorial staff, offices for the conservation staff, you have the administration, you have the superior, supportive staff, security, etc. Then we have the common area, foyer, reception, ticket counter, washroom, restroom, feeding room, etc. And these are, if you understand these things, very beginning. Now, recently, in India, that is a Bihar Museum, Patna. It is known as the Bihar Museum. It is believed to be. That is the only museum in India which followed in principle and in practical every aspect of disaster management. They have everything. They thought everything. Whether it will be implemented or not, whether it will be continued or not, that is a question. I don't care for that. But every damn thing is what thought. What kind of mortar they will use, what kind of brick they will use, what kind of lighting they will use. So if you use any man-made thing, it is a root cause of disaster. In museum I am talking. If you have chemical rich mortar, it will damage your heritage, organic materials. ये आपके डैमेज करेंगे ही करेंगे. So देखने में छोटा लगता है कि एक बिल्डिंग है, हमने लगाना है. क्यों लगाना है ये देखना जरूरी है. ये डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट का काम है. आपदा प्रबंधन यही है. एंड ऑल्सो मैं तो मानता हूँ, आई पर्सनली बिलीव कि ह्यूमन रिसोर्सेस आर द रूट काउज ऑफ डिसास्टर इन एनी बिल्डिंग, सोसाइटी और दैट. वो सोचता ही नहीं. तो सैनिटाइज करना जरूरी है, अवेयरनेस जरूरी है. यू हैव टू मेक देम अवेयर. और अवेयर कैसे करेंगे? तो आप, you are the example, because you are the leader of the this kind of initiative. So it responsibility, you have to owe the responsibility on your soldier. अभी सिंह साहब कह रहे थे कि एनडीआरएफ ने क्विक रिस्पांस दिया तुर्की में, साहब हमारे यहाँ तो फाइल चलाने में 25 दिन लग जाती है। अर्थक्वेक आपका इंतजार नहीं करता है, या फ्लड कहीं आपका इंतजार नहीं करता है कि वो आएगा आपको पूछ के आएगा कि मैं आ रही हूं। तो आपको अवेयर होना पड़ेगा, और अवेयर तभी होंगे जब आप उससे जुड़े हुए होंगे। आत्मीय संबंध प्रेम का द्योतक होता है, और प्रेम शाश्वत होता है। और ये प्रेम प्रेमी प्रेमिका का नहीं है, हमारे होने का, वजूद का है। हमारे होने का वजूद। हम हर दिन कहते हैं भारत जिंदाबाद। भारत को हमने देखा नहीं, लेकिन जिंदाबाद करते हैं, क्योंकि मैं जानता हूं कि जो हमें रोटी और रोटी देता है, जो हमें रहने को छत दिया है, जो हमारे साथ रहने के लिए लोग दिया है, वो मेरा देश है, वो भारत महान है, इसलिए जिंदाबाद है। इसी तरह से आप जिस दिन यह फील करने लगेंगे, इफ यू फील, जिस दिन, द मोमेंट यू विल लाइक फीलिंग that it is yours, you will start and carrying those things. And here starts the disaster management. The first lesson. I was looking after the security of the National Museum for long, and the National Museum is center where all the head of the states generally do visit. So every kind you have to look into the all aspects. The first, they don't care, sir. Dear friends, they don't care about that who is working. What kind of material they are using, what kind of exhibition is there. They do care who are coming. So you are the first disaster. That is why you have the घेरा होता है ना, you have the layers of the security, कि प्रधानमंत्री के आसपास कौन जाए। तो हम लोग को भी जो पास इशू होता है, लाल पीले हरे होते हैं, कि कौन प्रॉक्सिमिटी में होगा, कितना दूर रहेगा। तो सिक्योरिटी तो हेजार्ड है ना हम, नहीं तो लाल पीले हरे क्यों होते? ये जो पास देते हैं सर आप, क्यों होते? क्योंकि हम हेजार्ड हैं या हेजार्डियस हैं, दोनों बात। तो these things have to be taken into account. So these are the important. I will quickly go is wall. This is the one of the finest example of the art, showing your care and curiosity to know about the museum. Here a tiny girl you are seeing, here is the book, here is the object, and behind that you have the head preserved in one of the museum in Denmark. So I have requested and they have shared it. And here this tiny girl, and जब हाथ पीछे होते हैं ना, आपकी उत्सुकता होती है, you have the curiosity. Curiosity of to know, curiosity of care, and curiosity of thinking. So that is why my topic of my this deliberation is museum, think disaster, and its management, hazards, experiences, and lesson. So here, this is the perfect example of this. If you look, if you stand, if you think like this, you will care for the object. What's a disaster? I don't, it's a theoretical. I don't want to go into it. So I will, sustainability, I won't go there. Yes. So here is the some points you should know. Hazards, exposure, vulnerability, disaster risk, residential risk, disaster risk reductions, disaster risk management. I'm not going to read, everybody knows, it is available in all the paper. और अभी तो इन्होंने हमारे मित्र आर.एन. सिंह जी ने एक किताब लिखी है, आपदा क्या है, आपदा प्रबंधन। तो इसमें छोटे छोटे चीज़ों को छुआ गया है, इन्होंने छुआ है। तो मैंने केवल आपको दिखाया कि ये हो सकता है। डिसास्टर्स क्या है, अभी ये जो है ना, हमारा what kind of disaster we will facing. So sometimes snow storms, earthquake, volcanic eruption, landslides, floods. These are the, generally it is being thought. There are many. UNESCO has published, ICOM has published 128 points for the cause of the disaster. But I have just given you the few. So how you will work in this? So in India, certain parts are, Roorkee is the best known for that, I should not speak. But this is the where we have faced the problem of the these earthquakes, and where we have lost our heritage. These are the centers where we have the experiences. Yes, see, here is the disaster. We are coming to the SPS Museum, Jammu, Srinagar. इस तरह का फ्लड आया और किस तरह से उसने बर्बाद किया है, आप उसका एक मंजर देख लीजिए. और ये एक वन पिक्चर, कहते हैं ना हमारे पत्रकारिता जगत में कहा जाता है, वन पिक्चर स्पीक्स लाउडर देन द थाउजेंड्स वर्ड्स. And here you have, if you see this picture, it is louder speaking than what I will explain. Similarly, you will see how it was damaged. See the buildings, crumbled buildings. I'm giving you the that is why I have posted the picture. See how it was damaged. Here, our works start. Damage happened because we didn't care for that. We have not controlled, we are not capable to control. But yes, when responsibility comes on our soldier, we do it. And here you have started doing it. You started doing this, restoring the story again. Here it is coming. Here it is coming. And recently, when it came, the then Chief Minister of Gujarat, Sri Narendra Modi ji, has come to inaugurate again the Kutch and Bhuj museums of the Kutch and Bhuj area. Now, these are the lessons. What we have to think, we have not to explain. Time is short. Yes, here we have the hope. Again, I have chosen this slide meticulously. It is from Bhagalpur. It is known as the Bikramshila Setu, and it has no relevance, but the photograph is just such, making it relevance felt. There is a sun rising, there is a breeze, and when sun rises, the new lights comes, and when the breezes are scarce, then we make a bridge between the disaster and the preventions. Here it is प्रतीक के रूप में इसको हमने प्रयोग किया है, और हम समझते हैं आपको प्रोवोक करेगा, इग्नाइट करेगा. Just think, to make be a bridge, be a light. Once you will be giving the light, you will make the breeze. Once you will make the breeze, the gap will be narrowed. When the gap will be narrowed, the things will be okay. So Srinagar you have seen, and now we are coming to SPS Museum. Here, the first inaugural photograph, rare photograph we have, the inaugural photograph of 80s. That is SPS Museum, Srinagar. Sir, Sri Pratap Singh Museum, Srinagar. And when flood came, these are the gallery. These are the gallery. It was when it is how Kashmir is prone, and how beautiful the place was. And when this water raised, changed into flood, and when it came as a flood, what is the result of our object? And साहब, आपको बड़े दुख के साथ बताना पड़ता है कि SPS म्यूजियम में वो चीज़ रखी हुई थी जिसको हम कहते हैं मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री, वहाँ से शुरू होती है. द राइटिंग ऑफ हिस्ट्री स्टार्टेड फ्रॉम दैट मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट ऑफ राज तरंगिणी वाज देयर. और राज तरंगिणी को माना जाता है, इट इज़ बिलीव्ड दैट इज द फर्स्ट written history. We don't have the concept of the history writing in India because हमारे यहाँ श्रुत परंपरा थी. That is why we have destroyed it, and the blood, how the flood has destroyed. We can few photographs I want to show you. Yes. When it came, it destroyed our objects. That is why we are the museums. Museum is the repository or center of your heritage. Here, your history is your history, not in ancestors. Your history is preserved. If you lose, means you are losing yourself. So, in museum is carrying that is for the study, education, and entertainment. And these if you lose these objects due to disaster, be it natural or the human by man-made, you have to lose it. So time is short, but I will sum up with this Tulsidas Ramcharitmanas Pankti. Tulsidas very nicely said, तुलसी और समय के सखा धीरज धर्म विवेक साहित्य साहस सत्य व्रत राम भरोसे एक. If you believe in this point, that is the more core of the disaster management. You have to be patient. You have to mention in the worst time, that is a dheeraj, your patience is required. Dharam, then you have to what the responsibility you owe, then you have to carry out it. Vivek, the sense of doing, with all the narrativeness, all the positivity, and this sahit. Then you have the resources, the literature. Sahas, you have a courage, and satbret with dedication. If you do this, then you will justify, you will reduce. You cannot control the natural phenomenon, but yes, you can reduce those things if you are thinking about the disaster in the museum and heritages. So that is why, friend, we have the limited time, but I know I have crossed 3-4 minutes, but with due apology, I have shown you few slides, just igniting your mind, just look into your faces, that you are the flag bearer of the preserver of the heritage. You are the saviors of the heritage. That is why I have a few words I have come with you, and I don't have the word after speaking O.P. Singh ji, who has minutely observed everything, narrated everything. So nice of you. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, Dr. Singh, and sharing your experiences from the National Museum and maintaining the National Museums and how the National Museum works and what are the different challenges normally the museums feel after a disaster basically hits that region. So because we are running short of time, I would like to say if there is any maybe a burning question, if you have anything to ask from Dr. Singh. Maybe one. All right. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. Any example where we were able to protect the content of the museum that would help us?
Yes.
Like any quick strategy which
Quick
works? Yeah,
strategy.
thank
We
you.
have to, I'm talking about the global scenario now. Have you heard about the Brazil, when we have lost the museum in Brazil? The first human skull, known as the Lucy, which is that was lost. And similar situation arises in France. Louvre Museum, you might be knowing. Louvre was, Paris was prone to flood. And the moment it was declared a national emergency due to flood, the people of the Paris and the management have quickly responded and shifted the objects which were on the down or the basement to the next place in an hour. And there was a human chain. You'll surprised to know. There was a human chain for that. एक बक्सा उठाया, एक दूसरे के हाथ में दिया, तीसरे ने तीसरे जगह पहुंचाया, ट्रक पर आधा वो लेके चले गए जहां पानी नहीं था. That is the quickest response in the history of the museum safety and disaster management. It is what prevented, yes. So that is the preparedness. That was the preparedness. They were prepared for that. अभी दूसरी बात मैं आपको दूसरा एग्जांपल मैं नेशनल म्यूजियम से देता हूँ. I'm giving you the example of the National Museum, the heart of the city. And you know, National Museum is situated on the corner of Janpath, and now it is known Kartabya Path. Earlier it was known as the Rajpath. and it is in the corner. It was planned by the lieutenant's plan, was in the planning. And beside that, we have the Bigyan Bhavan. That is ceremonial auditorium we have. All the big functions do happens there. And there was a big fire in the Bigyan Bhavan, adjoining to my building. And there was no security there, personnel so much, CSF induct नहीं हुए थे उस समय, या हो रहे थे, कम थे. क्विक रिस्पॉन्स ये था कि किसी ने कोई समझा ही नहीं, जिसका ऑब्जेक्ट था उसने अपने को शिफ्ट किया. वो क्या कहते हैं, फायर एक्सटिंग्विशर वगैरह वगैरह लेके अपने खड़े रहे. वो जल जाएंगे लेकिन जलने नहीं देंगे. Once history objects are lost, so national museum is also example of doing this. एक बार क्या हो गया, हमारे administrative building में आग लगी. We have fire, and the quick response was that we have not called the firemen. We put ourselves, the fire extinguisher, run there and pour the things. ठीक है, मेरे documents खराब हो गए, लेकिन मैंने पूरे buildings को बचने से बचा दिया. These are the quick responses. The quick responses comes to you first, and these are, I have given the best example. One is of the loop, and the second one the National Museum. And similarly, we in the Delhi, in the heart of Delhi, we have lost Natural History Museum.
Thank you, sir.
Finished.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. It was really wonderful. I'll give it to Devlina.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I'd like to request Professor U.P. Singh, Deputy Director of IIT Roorkee, to present a token of appreciation to sir for his valuable contribution to this event. Thank you very much, sir. Now we will move on to the next plenary session on disaster management of hill heritage sites in India. This session will be moderated by Professor Ram Satish Pasupuleti. I request Professor Ram Satish to please come on the dais and take his place. I request our panelists, Shri Nakul Kumar Tarun, former government employee having experience for disaster management and currently associated with the Zone 4 Solutions. He is the former Deputy Director with the Directorate General of NDRF and Civil Defense of the Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of India. I also request Dr. R.N. Singh, Managing Trustee of Global Rescue Foundation, working in the area of disaster management and health sector emergency. I also welcome Shri Manoj Kumar Saxena, Superintending Archaeologist, ASI, Dehradun Circle.
Hello. Yeah. Very good afternoon, participants, and welcome to the panelists for today's session. And it was interesting sessions today to see from the security point of it and from the very ground level reality of how the museum conservation and with a very community-based approach, how the communities has to be involved and other things. Very interesting to see all these sessions. And I would like to, before taking a particular view from the panelist, I want to ask two simple questions from the audience first. You don't need to answer it, you just have to raise your hand. How many of you have visited museums? Please raise your hand. Okay, now the second question, how many of you visited hills? Now the third question, how many of you visited museums on hills? Okay, so now this is the statistics. So this is a sample of...
But not bad.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So just to get an idea of how many of you know that at least in a state like Uttarakhand, we have more than 40 museums, within the hill region, we have more than 40 plus museums are there. So this is something being in a state of Uttarakhand. Even I was a little shocked when I was looking at the NDMA report where they have listed out per state how many museums. I was a little shocked because I was not aware of this particular thing. And I really want to know where are these museums, So this is the locations and all this. This database would actually help to even locate these cultural assets, this thing. So now, so very fundamental question which I would like to start with the panelist with. So we talk about heritage in a general context, what the previous expert also have talked about, the definition of heritage and the definition of risk and disaster. But how the heritage context is different from plains and hills, whether in terms of its risk, whether in terms of its context itself. So why I'm asking that is because when you said the example of Louvre Museum in Paris, something happens, it is in the city. But here, the museums in the hills, they are in a sparsely populated areas. They are in a very rugged terrain conditions. So even something happens in a museum, the information may not reach to the local communities also. So on this particular view, how do you see heritage? How is it different from hill context and a plain context? Any specifics about the hill context in terms of risk, in terms of its characterization? Yeah, so I would like to open to the panels.
I started my career as a trainee of the archaeology, belonging to the first batch of Institute of Archaeology. I had the opportunity to work in the Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. And I was working a site called Naranag. That was the biggest temple complex, Shiva temple complex in entire world. And that was destroyed by the flood, cloud burst, and the natural phenomenon, the flood, the landslides, and invasions. So here, there was a museum on the Kangan. Kangan and Bangat, there's a tourist local city. Perhaps now it is a district. So they have their places, and they do care, even though they do care, the locals. And as you have rightly said, there is a gap between the people residential area and the where you have the temple or the heritage site or heritage museum. But people responded it. And the Bakarwals, the local, those who lives in this area, and they said they are the sheep grazers. भेड़ बकरी चलाने, बकरवाल नाम ही उनका, बकरी चलाने वाले. And they had the people, वो जो कि ये अभी तक कहते थे कि ये दिल्ली बादशाह के लोग नहीं बचाएंगे इसको, ये हम बचाएंगे. तो वही एक बात, the first and foremost is that care of the people you have to sanitize, you have to make aware that. And if even he is not literate, he will respond and he will do the things first. And second, that you have to, I was talking a few minutes before to someone that you have to care for the local structure. If you go like, you will feel Josimat. If you follow, then you have the many cloud burst, and you will save your heritage as saved in the where Sonberg and the Bangat. They have huge landslide. You have the huge rainfall, but structure is as such, but it was not damaged. Sorry. That is why I am sharing with my experience. I have seen, and when the structures, mortar-made structure that we call human-made structures, those are also, but modern structure, they make the fit like Josimat we are facing. But if you are going for, then you have the Sonmark. It is the Sonmark, that is the first place. I will enlighten you guys. The first tool made by the human is known as the Paleolithic tools, and within that we have the Avivalian hand axe, and we have the advanced stage Achulian, which is found in France. But we the people have the proud, the Avivalian's tool are there, that is also part of the museum, but that was kept in Sonmark, and it was not destroyed because they are carrying the objects in their structure, which is suitably made for those environment, keeping in mind the cloud burst, earthquake, and other natural phenomena, and it is intact. Whereas we have the museum, we have lost many. Thank you.
So any other panelists would like to have their views?
मैं इस पे एज ए डिसास्टर मैनेजर प्रैक्टिशनर के प्रव्यू से मैं बोलता हूँ, जो इन्होंने बताया अपना, लेकिन एक डिसास्टर मैनेजर इसको कैसे सोचता है, जो आपने सवाल पूछा, जो हम लोग प्लान बनाते तो क्या करते हैं हम लोग इस प्रॉब्लम को सोल्व करने के लिए, कि जब आपका जो साइट है, म्यूजियम है या आर्टिफैक्ट है जो आइसोलेशन में, तब आप क्या, हम लोग उसे प्लानिंग में कैसे डालते हैं। एक्चुअली होता है ये कि ये हमेशा ही कहा गया है कि इफ़ यू फेल इन प्लान यू आर प्लानिंग टू फेल। तो अगर आपका एक अच्छा डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान बन जाता है एक क्वालिफाइड डिसास्टर मैनेजर से, तो कई कंसर्न जो सुबह से बात हो रहा है उसमें से 99% रिजोल्व हो जाता है। कैसे होता है, एक लाइन और मैं इस पर बोलता हूँ, होता है कि जो डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान जो है वो सबसे सस्ता और सबसे पहला स्टेप है डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट साइकिल को स्टार्ट करने के लिए, सबसे पहला। अदरवाइज अगर आप पीसेस में करते रहते हैं तो कभी भी वो साइकिल चलता नहीं है, आपको जब तब करना पड़ेगा और करते रहेंगे। इस प्रॉब्लम को कैसे सोल्व करते हैं, जो डिसास्टर मैनेजर होता है वो क्या करता है, आपके साइट का रिस्क निकालता है, जिसमें से ये भी एक रिस्क है। एक रिस्क ये भी है कि आपका जो साइट है वो क्राउडेड प्लेस में है, बाजार में है, ये भी एक रिस्क है। और आपका साइट क्राउड से बहुत दूर है, ये भी एक रिस्क है। तो कहने का मतलब ये है कि जैसा रिस्क है आपको, जितना आप बीमार है उसी हिसाब से दवाई आपको सजेस्ट किया जाता है। ऐसा नहीं कि कुछ भी दवाई आपको खिला दिया। तो एक डिसास्टर मैनेजर उसी हिसाब से प्लान करता है कि इस केस में हम कम्युनिटी को कैसे इन्वॉल्व करें, कितने दूर पे है, कितना रिस्पॉन्स टाइम होगा। जब वो टीम और टास्क फोर्स बनाता है तो उस टीम एंड टास्क फोर्स में उसी हिसाब के लोगों को रखता है जो कि उसे पूरी कम्युनिटी को मोटिवेट करके लाएं और आपको रिस्पॉन्ड कर पाएँ। ये इसका प्रोसेस होता है। जब और प्लान के बारे में बात करेंगे तो और जो कई स्टेप्स होते हैं उस पर मैं डिस्कस करूँगा।
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, yeah, please. Yeah, please.
यहाँ उत्तराखंड में गढ़वाल यूनिवर्सिटी है, उनका म्यूज़ियम भी ये ऐसे ही लैंडस्लाइड में पूरा म्यूज़ियम ख़त्म हो गया उनका। फिर बाद में अभी उन्होंने नया म्यूज़ियम चौरास में जो कैंपस बना है वहाँ शिफ्ट किया, तो उसमें भी जो लोकल कम्युनिटी थी उन्होंने काफ़ी हेल्प किया उनको सारी एंटीक्विटी को रिट्राइव करने में। तो ये एक लोकल कम्युनिटी का इन्वॉल्वमेंट बहुत ज़रूरी हो जाता है। लेकिन जनरली ये होता है कि हम उनको कैंपस से दूर रखते हैं कि यहाँ लोकल कम्युनिटी ना आए या कोई इस तरीके के न्यूसेंस ना हो। वो अपनी जगह में वो भी ज़रूरी है, लेकिन उसके साथ साथ एक टास्क फोर्स ज़रूर बना लेना चाहिए उनको इन्वॉल्व करने के लिए, कुछ कम से कम हम लोगों को वॉलंटियर्स वहाँ मिल जाए। तो ऐसा कहीं भी जहाँ भी हिल एरिया में खासकर ये बहुत डिज़ास्टर इस तरीके के होते हैं। उत्तराखंड में तो ऑलमोस्ट एवरी ईयर पिथौरागढ़ और इस एरिया में तो ये क्लाउड बस के होते हैं, कहीं कहीं तो पूरे पूरे गांव तो वहाँ भी हम, ये भी एक तरीके का हेरिटेज मैनेजमेंट ही है, पुराने गांव ख़त्म हो जा रहे हैं, तो उनको लिए भी कुछ ना कुछ इस तरीके का एक टास्क फोर्स बना लिया जाए ताकि क्विक रिस्पॉन्स उनको मिल सके।
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So, sure. I mean, I got bits of it, but the
हिमालयन रेंज जो है टोटल वो जो सिस्मिक रेंज 5 में आता है,
1-4, yeah.
5 भी सारा मान के चलिए, दिल्ली तक 4 में था, वो 5 भी माना जा रहा है। तो है क्या कि एक तो सिस्मिक जोन में होने के नाते हिमालयन रेंज काफ़ी क्रिटिकल है, और फिर जैसा बताया लैंडस्लाइड और क्लाउड बर्स्ट जो होते हैं हिमालयन रेंज में वो ज़्यादा खतरनाक है। यहाँ पे पहाड़ों में रास्ते वगैरह ऐसी जगहों पे हैं कि फायर हो जाए तो फायर ब्रिगेड नहीं पहुँचेगा और तमाम चीज़ें हैं, और मैदानी भागों में दूसरे, बट हर म्यूजियम का एक अलग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है, लैंड है, अप्रोच है, तमाम चीज़ें हैं, कहीं बाढ़ आती है, कहीं आग लगती है, कहीं, तो मैदानी भागों में और पहाड़ी भागों में ये फ़र्क है। तो मैं कहता हूँ जब सर्वे और ऑडिट हो तो हर म्यूजियम का अलग अलग मिलेगा और अलग अलग उसके प्लान बनने चाहिए, वो एक साथ कुछ भी जोड़ा नहीं जा सकता है। हिमालयन थोड़ा क्रिटिकल है तो वी हैव टू लिटिल मोर केयरफुल।
Thank you. Yeah. So I have a follow-up question on the same, an extension of that. The way Nakul sir have mentioned about to have a disaster management plan and certain guidelines. On the same note, even NDMA have issued certain guidelines on museums. And they also have issued a guidelines on the cultural properties, cultural sites and the precincts. At the end of these reports, they've also given certain annexures, of course, in the later part we will be showing that as well. There are very generic and standard guidelines of the standard annexures, which we can say for any architect. I think all of these people are from architecture and disaster management. It clearly says when you design a building, what all to be done. When you design a museum building, it is not only about the value of that particular building, I mean the precinct of that particular building, but also the objects inside it. It has given a clear-cut aspect. What my question here is how effective are these guidelines which are there in the NDMA website? How much they have reached to the museum custodians in the hills? How effective it is?
देखिए म्यूजियम एनडीएमए ने म्यूजियम्स की गाइडलाइन अभी बनाई है, 2 साल पहले की बात है, बहुत पहले की बात नहीं है, तो अभी तो वो लोगों तक नहीं पहुंची है और ये हम लोगों की जिम्मेवारी है कि हम लोग पहुंचाएं। दूसरी बात, एक एग्जांपल देता हूं, हिंदुस्तान में करीब 1000 के करीब म्यूजियम्स हैं जिनकी लिस्ट हमारे पास अवेलेबल है। शायद ही संजीव जी, शायद ही किसी म्यूजियम का डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान बना हो। तो एनडीएमए कहता है कि डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान बनना चाहिए, लेकिन जिनके म्यूजियम्स हैं, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया के हैं, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के हैं, इंस्टीट्यूशंस के हैं, प्राइवेट हैं, किसी को सुनाई नहीं देता। तो अभी तो बहुत प्रयास करने की जरूरत है। ये जो हमारा ग्लोबल रिस्क फाउंडेशन है, अभी तक प्रैक्टिस हमारी यही रही है कि हम अंधेरे में छलांग लगाते रहे, लेकिन लक की बात यह है कि अभी तक गिरे नहीं है जमीन पे। हमारी इमेजिनेशन बड़ी पक्की है कि जब गिरेंगे तो नीचे गद्दा बिछा होगा, चोट नहीं लगेगी। वी आर ट्राइंग, कोशिश कर रहे हैं लगातार कि कुछ अच्छा हो, इसीलिए हम लोग यहाँ जुटे हैं।
That's true, sir. That's true.
Should I say something?
Yes, please.
This is true that the guidelines cannot be mandatory. They are the broader picture of the whole thing. So NDMA issued the guidelines in 2017, if I'm right. So 5-6 years have passed. Now, guidelines can tell you the broad contours that what is to be done. Each and every building, whether it's historical building, it's a museum or a government building, or any building of importance, or even your office, should have a management plan, should have a disaster management plan. In fact, as I said in my interaction, as I said in my opening remark, that this consciousness developed only after the tsunami in 2004. Before that, there was no structured way of looking at things. Our policy was totally, responsive. You just help somebody through your through your money, through your grains and everything. But there was no structural policy. So we started a policy, we started a process, we started a law. Everything was put in place. So the question is that you should not only have a disaster management plan, but how you can amalgamate all those policies. For example, in case of museum, I personally believe that museums are much more important than the rest of the buildings, simply because that heritage by itself says that what you eat, what you feel, what you do, everything is included in that heritage. And it is of utmost historical value. An item which is being destroyed cannot be returned, cannot be retrieved, whereas your property in the house can be retrieved. You can become from poor to rich, you can become, but the poverty that you acquire through the destruction of the historical sites, probably you can never get it back. So it's very important. That is why I said that not only you have a management plan, you have a priority of activities that is to be done. If it is in the hilly areas, what needs to be done? If it is in the plains, what needs to be done? But the more important thing is how you can integrate the traditional way of dealing with it. The traditional way of dealing it. You have so much of local communities residing. That is why when you talk of heritage, you not only talk of buildings and monuments, you talk of the urban areas where they are located. And the people who are, as he gave the example of France, the people immediately swung into action and they became a chain of people, started responding in the way they should respond. Similarly, you need to respond through traditional method. I'll give you one example. In NDRF, there is one battalion in Pune which has developed and designed so many indigenous methods to deal with it. So many indigenous. You may not have. In Nepal earthquake, we went for, here a lot of people are from civil engineering background. In Nepal earthquake, we did a lot of shoring in order to protect the precariously hanging building. We did go for shoring simply because to protect the structure of the building. We could have damaged the building and could have rescued the live victims from inside. But we tried to protect the building as well because they were very precarious and they were very important. And moreover, they were a threat to the rescuers also. There was one serving army officer who died because of the collapse of the building, and other teams, they had refused to retrieve the dead body. They wanted to amputate the dead body. And we took upon ourselves the challenge to retrieve the dead body in full one way. And that was widely appreciated. We worked for 9 hours, 10 hours. So the method to respond is also very important. And perhaps in case of museum, it is very important that how you respond immediately with the traditional knowledge that you have. And that is why we are losing sight of the traditional method. We are not taking account of the fact that the traditional, rural, indigenous methods are there to protect the heritage site, and we are not doing that. This is
absolutely true, sir. Sir, on the similar note, when you talk about, when we have to understand the traditional methods, and today we are actually interfacing with the modern methods of investigation and the traditional knowledge systems, where the communities. Do you think in terms of the risk, the perception of risk, is it too varied in terms of the communities versus with the police force, the army and the local authorities, or the NGOs like, so because I'll just tell you an example. एक सांप जा रहा है, तो सांप को देख के someone will think about some Chinese, or someone will think about eating it on a plate. Someone will play it as a Nag Devta. Someone will take a photo shoot. So same sap, it has certain characters, but the risk is perceived in a different way, right? So here it is in this aspect, especially in the hill context, these hill communities are living with risk every day. Unlike people in my south or somewhere, they are living every day with risk. For them, today we see in a newspaper that Joshimath is falling or something, but there are many villages where they are encountering such things every day of risk. So how do communities see this kind of risk aspect, and how do the army personnel or the police personnel see this, and how the local organizations like the planning authorities, the village panchayats, which have some limited skills, we are not expecting very high professionals actually settled in these offices, They're having serious manpower issues also. So how do you think they are looking at this risk? Is the perception different?
देखिए अभी जो आप कह रहे हैं ना कि वो मैं यही पहले भी जो इनिशिएट किया तब भी कहा था कि ये हम बीट एंड पीसेस में अगर सोचेंगे तो हमें अलग अलग करना पड़ेगा। जब सिंह साहब जैसे बताया आर्यन सिंह साहब ने कि एक गाइडलाइन है और उस गाइडलाइन को हमें सही से हम कहाँ फेल होते हैं, हम इंटरप्रेट ही सही से नहीं कर पाते हैं उसे। क्यों? क्योंकि उसका भी स्किल की कमी है नीचे, क्योंकि हम लोग जो उस पर काम कर रहे हैं तो हमें समझ में आता है। उसमें एक सेक्शन है जिसमें इन्वॉल्व की कम्युनिटी बेस्ड डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट, एक सेक्शन है उसमें। कहने का मतलब ये हुआ कि आपको जो आसपास की कम्युनिटी है उस कम्युनिटी को आपको इन्वॉल्व करना है। अब इन्वॉल्व कैसे करेंगे? इन्वॉल्व करने के लिए पहले उनको आपको उस प्लान में रोल एंड रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी फिक्स करना पड़ेगा। कैसे फिक्स करेंगे? उनका स्टैंडिंग ऑपरेटिंग प्रोसीजर बनाना पड़ेगा, एसओपी बना देंगे। लेट से कि मैंने पहले ही बना दिया कि शर्मा साहब का जो है कि अगर लेट से कि इस केस में ये जो है वो सर्च एंड रेस्क्यू करेंगे, ये जो है वो फायर फाइटिंग करेंगे, है ना, वर्मा जी जो है एम्बुलेंस बुलाएंगे। मैंने ऐसा एसओपी बना दिया। तब ये बना देने से तो होगा नहीं, केवल बनाने से होगा नहीं। कैसे होगा कि शर्मा जी को ट्रेन करना पड़ेगा, मतलब उस कम्युनिटी वाले को ट्रेन करना पड़ेगा जो एक्सपर्ट हैं, लेट से एनडीआरएफ के या एसडीआरएफ के या डीडीएमए के, उनको ट्रेन करना पड़ेगा जब अपना एसओपी को एग्जीक्यूट करने के लिए। जो काम आपने उनको दिया है उनके पास होगा ट्रेडिशनल, कुछ भी नहीं होगा तो कम से कम वॉलंटरिज्म होगा, तभी आपने उनको टीम में और टास्क फोर्स में लिया है। मतलब ही वाज विलिंग कि मैं कुछ कंट्रीब्यूट करूं, तभी आपने उनको टीम और टास्क फोर्स में लिया है। इसका मतलब इंटरेस्ट है। अब ये मैनेजर का काम है कि उस इंटरेस्ट को हम सही से, मैं तो कहूँगा यूज क्या करना, एक्सप्लॉइट करें, आपकी उसे ट्रेन करें कि ताकि आपके काम आए डिसास्टर के केस में। तो डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान जब हम लोग बनाते हैं तो उसकी 2 कॉपी बनती है। इसीलिए यहाँ पे समझना जरूरी है। एक कॉपी तो जो साइट है वहाँ पे रहता है, जैसे आपकी म्यूजियम है या जो भी स्कूल है, कॉलेज है, सिनेमा हॉल है, जो भी है, एक कॉपी तो उसकी वहाँ रहती है। दूसरी कॉपी डीडीएमए में सबमिट किया जाता है। उसका लॉजिक ये है कि डीडीएमए वाला लेके रखे नहीं उसे। डीडीएमए इज द कोऑर्डिनेटिंग एम्ब्रेला जो 12 इमरजेंसी सपोर्ट फंक्शनरीज एंड 13वां कम्युनिटी ये आइडेंटिफाई किया हुआ है डीएम एक्ट में। तो इन 13 के साथ बैठ करके उस प्लान पे, जो एक क्वालिफाइड डिसास्टर मैनेजर प्लान बनाता है, उस प्लान को वो चर्चा करवाए उन लोग के साथ कि देखिए ऐसे ऐसे है, उसमें शॉर्टेस्ट रूट भी है, उसमें फायर के आने का रास्ता है, उसमें हॉस्पिटल के जाने का रास्ता है, उसमें कम्युनिटी को कब आना है, कब कम्युनिटी को रास्ता बनाना है, अगर रास्ता बंद हो जाए तो तब आप उस कम्युनिटी को सही से यूज कर पाएंगे। ये है इसका मेरे हिसाब से है।
Sir, on the same note, when you say here, what you said is from your plan you are informing the community, right? But how much you are also learning from the community? The community knows the shortest trails. The community knows their natural disaster point of it.
That's why I'm saying. ये जो है ना, जो प्लान जब आप मैंने कहा कि आपने प्लान बना, कोई भी डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान जो बनता है किसी भी कम्युनिटी का या किसी भी रिमोट एरिया का, तो वो वन वे प्रोसेस नहीं है कि मैं आया और ड्राइंग बना के चला गया। ड्राइंग तो आर्किटेक्ट ही बनाएगा, है ना, ड्राफ्टमैन ही बनाएगा। लेकिन डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान बनाने के लिए जब प्लान बनता है तो जो कम्युनिटी का स्टेक होल्डर उनसे आप बात करते हैं, तो उन तभी तो, जैसे मैंने कहा कि अगर मैं बात करूंगा आपसे तभी मुझे पता लगेगा कि आपके पास क्या क्या ऑलरेडी मेथोडोलॉजी है, ट्रेडिशनल वैल्यू है आपके पास। बहुत सारे अब गांवों में पहले 2005 के पहले डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट नहीं था, तो इसका मतलब बाढ़ पे काम नहीं होता था क्या? होता था ना। सर ने बताया कि भाई अभी तो म्यूजियम का जो गाइडलाइन है वो 17 में बना है, तो 17 के पहले कुछ भी काम नहीं होता था क्या? होता था। लेकिन अब गाइडलाइन आ जाने से ये हुआ कि सारी चीज़ों को, इवन गाइडलाइन में भी ट्रेडिशनल चीज़ें डाली हुई हैं कि जो आपके पास हमारे दूर दराज एरिया में जहाँ भी जो आर्ट्स और कल्चर को है बचाने के लिए जो चीज़ें हैं उसको आप करें। कैसे करेंगे? जब आप कम्युनिटी से बात करेंगे। लेकिन प्लान और गाइडलाइन के होने से ये है कि अब आपके पास एक लीगल डॉक्यूमेंट है जिसमें आप सामने वाला को भी, जिसको आपने रोल दिया है कम्युनिटी से, वो भी प्रिविलेज फील करता है कि मैं एक टीम में हूँ, मैं एक टास्क फोर्स में हूँ, मैं वॉलंटियर हूँ, उसकी एक आइडेंटिटी है। तो वो भी मोटिवेट हो करके आपको कंट्रीब्यूट करता है। और फिर उसी चीज़ को जब प्लान बनता है तो प्लान एक बार बन करके ऐसा नहीं कि जन्मों जन्मांतर तक चलेगा। एक प्लान का रूल ये है कि वो हर साल अपडेट होएगा। अब अगले साल लेट से कि फिर कुछ हुआ, कम्युनिटी में कुछ नई कम्युनिटी से कुछ नया इनपुट आया, तो ये डिसास्टर मैनेजर का काम है कि उसे उसमें अपडेट करे। वो लेट से पिछले बार में छूट गया था, ऐसा हो सकता है, कोई नया विजडम आया तो उसे इंक्लूड करें, हम उस प्लान को आगे बढ़ाएं।
जैसा ही है और ये उनके ऊपर ही छोड़ना चाहिए। ट्रेडिशनल मेथड है, they are very expert in it and they can do.
Okay. But when you are making these policies and guidelines, how much they are actually integrated?
Like government,
that
you
is
know, the orders they read.
Yeah, please.
I have two examples. That is very, that is part of the study also. That one is when you are interacting, the chapter ND authority has made the guidelines. Guidelines, it is not directives. Guidelines means it is dotted in a book, not going to the core. As you know that even the national museums of India, there is 5, they don't know about the disaster management. And I say that they have 8 years has passed, they have no disaster plan. So this is the failure. Second, that when you add the community, you do the things better. I have the example of Bihar. Though it is known for other reasons, but I'm giving you the examples. I have a good friend who is the curator also, namely Dr. Shiv Kumar Misra. I have a student, Dr. Murari Saran Jha, and I have a friend, Sushant Bhaskar. Two are working for the NGO. One is in the government. In government sector, he has one person having the many responsibilities. He is a curator of the Betia Museum to Bhagalpur Museum. So 300-400 kilometers he is running every day. So he is not concentrating on one. But what he did, he worked with the NGO. And NGO are working, they are going to the community, village to village. They, in the Archaeological Survey of India, we have a program, village to village survey. Why you are doing the village to village survey? Means you are interacting with the common people, locality, and you are gathering the information all the time कि यहाँ कोई था क्या, in the terms of the monuments and antiquity, but at the same time how you preserve it. So we have the curative and the preventive, two kind of the preservation we have. But if you sanitize the local people, you will, if you interact with the people, these NGO, namely those who are run by the Dr. Murari and the Sushant Bhaskar, one is from Darbhanga, one is from Begusarai. They are doing, and they have lost their job even. Despite that, they are every week, they have a panchayat. And they are calling the Mukhya, Panchayat Sevaks, and they invite everyone, even common people. And they say, Bhaiya, आपके यहाँ कोई मूर्ति मिली क्या? अब आपके घर में मूर्ति है, नहीं नहीं ये मूर्ति तो मेरे पिताजी की है, नहीं नहीं मेरे दादाजी की है, then you sense आप में डेवलप करता है, he gives you insight, नहीं 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 ये मूर्ति मेरे दादाजी की नहीं है, पिताजी की नहीं है, ये संतति की है, it is for heritage, it is for our sanctity, for the generation, and it is for national property, and you have the act, हमारे 1958 का एक्ट, एंटिक्विटी एक्ट है उसके लिए, 1972 में फर्दर रिवाइड, तो वो आपको सैनिटाइज और फिर कहता है कि आप कैसे प्रिजर्व करेंगे, आपने वर्मिलियन लगा दिया, ठीक है, वो लॉस हो जाएगा ना, रिएक्ट करेगा, सिंदूर लगा दिया आपने क्योंकि आपके काम देवता है. वी हैव ए कॉल सिक्किम, आई एम चूंकि वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द हिमालयन रीजन, आई हैव वर्कड इन द सिक्किम आल्सो. We have the Neolithic tool known as the soldier celt. It is a kind of axe known as the soldier celt. It is typically found in the northeast area only. And there is a community known as the Lepcha there. They worship it as their Kul Devta. So they pour in their Naam Ghar, that is Puja Ghar, and they do everything, wo aarti or lep phep jitna chandan pandan. For them it is a matter of worship. For you it is antiquity as an archaeologist. For us it is a national property because it is a single and typical kind of mankind made with tool known as the shoulder hand axe and celt. So it is important. So if you I am talking about these three persons, Shiv Kumar Mishra, Bhaskar and Sushant Bhaskar and Murari. They are doing so wonderful work. They have made the awareness in the area, and you know earlier there was only 38 objects in the Lakshmeshwar Maharaja Lakshmeshwar Singh Museum. There is in Darbhanga only 38 objects. Now it is 1080 objects. Yeah. Because they made the awareness, and they also got the traditional knowledge how to preserve it. Okay. So that is important. If it is not you make the policy, you go to the people, and also two-way interaction always. और आप जानते हैं, you guys are the student of science. जैसे कि ये इसमें दीप जलाएंगे, रख देंगे लिफाफा तो बंद हो जाएगा, लिफाफा आधा रखेंगे तो ऑक्सीजन आएगा, कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड छोड़ेगा. This is a simple theory. If you go to people, then you need oxygen, you need also to avoid the carbon dioxide. So if you put both the things, it will drop. It won't work. But if you have the rational view, then you will work.
Yeah, definitely, sir. I have seen a similar thing. Of course, I have also been interacting with Bihar Museum for a couple of years, and I really appreciated their work. And first of all, the building itself was designed by Maki, and that's how the whole planning system was integrated from the Japanese ideologies had already flown into this. And I've also seen that in the tribal museum in Bhopal and Indira Gandhi Rashtriya Manav Sangralaya, the Museum of Man, where the communities are involved. So in fact, even to maintain those structures, the people from Northeast, people from different places, they come over here and stay for 1 month completely, and they maintain those structures, and then again, you know. So this kind of fund initiatives, you know, because everything requires money, you know, right? The funds are important to bring them from somewhere in different Jharkhand, South and Northeast, and to keep them for 1 month. And this is all, of course, the Ministry of Culture is taking care. How about the issues of the private museums? Because, you know, in the museums, there are different typologies. We have the trust museums, we have the private museums, we have the public central museums, you know. So what is this? I mean, because at least in Uttarakhand, what I realize is there are many private, hill places, there are many private museums which are either running by a family or a trust or something like that. So what are the challenges that they really face? Because
very wonderful question. It should to be known to the people. I don't have the experience of the Uttarakhand, very frank, but I have the experience of the Gujarat. Yeah. And maximum the museums in Gujarat are run by the trust, village committee, and the private one. And the Lad Bhai Museum, a very famous museum, you might be knowing, in Ahmedabad. And they have a different kind of system. Every week, despite there is a crunch of funds, they don't have much money, but the community supports them. How the community supports? every one month they have interaction with the people.
Okay.
They do call them people. People are coming voluntarily, right?
Yeah.
These are the private NGO, private museums. People are coming there, and they don't have many things to do, but at least they are known. These are the heritage we have. We have to preserve it. So this sense of responsibility they have in the people. That is why there is every village in Gujarat you have a museum, and the earliest museum in India is in the Gujarat. So this is the how you have to make the community get involved in. तो आपको जुड़ना तो पड़ेगा साहब. जी सर.
coming to your question, डॉक्टर सिंह ने कहा कि नॉट फॉर प्रॉफिट म्यूजियम का डिफिनेशन है, उसमें that's very true, and that is why the village communities or the trusts, they are running the museums. लेकिन वो source of income local communities को दे रहा है as a matter of tourism.
Yeah.
So tourists आते हैं तो उनसे उनका livelihood बढ़ता है, उनका source of income बढ़ता है. So that is one advantage that they have, and that is why they want to get involved. But you know, there are 2-3 things I would like to tell that, as you rightly said, community का कैसे participation बढ़े. In fact, in our country, the problem is that we are not connecting the dots.
Yeah.
When we talk of comprehensive integrated disaster management policy or plan, then you need to have the involvement of all the stakeholders, and public is one of the greatest stakeholders, you know, the community, the local community. And that is why we have started talking about the local preparedness, how to localize the preparedness. That is very important. So unless you have the connecting dots, for example, we have a lot of community awareness programs, NDRF does, so many other agencies do. But when actual disaster comes, when actual disaster happens, you hardly find any volunteers or any well-trained people. वहाँ पे हो सकता है उनको awareness program दिया गया हो, जैसे हमने सारे teachers को दिया है, university के professors को दिया है, लेकिन अगर university या educational institution के आसपास अगर कोई disaster होता है, तो do they really get involved? They do not get involved precisely because maybe that lack of knowledge is there or lack of volunteerism is there. And this is where the Western countries have gone much ahead.
Right.
They are treated as volunteers. A doctor, maybe a doctor at one place, maybe a volunteer at other place. So as the disaster management is concerned. So connecting the dot is very important, and how to integrate.
Yeah.
So आप ये जान लीजिए, for example, I tell you, आपके building में ये fire extinguisher लगा हुआ है. How many of you know how to operate it?
Right.
You have. How many of you have seen that validity of this fire extinguisher? हो सकता है जब आग लगे तो ये valid ना हो, इसका expiry date हो. तो ये सब छोटी-छोटी चीजें जो है वो comprehensive disaster management. म्यूजियम के केस में डॉक्टर सिंह जानते होंगे, अगर मान लीजिए अर्थक्वेक आता है, पूरा बिल्डिंग गिर जाती है, तो उसको हम कहाँ स्टोर करेंगे? उसका जो हमारा अगर बचा हुआ जो आइटम्स है, वो क्या हमारा प्लान है कि हम उसको कहाँ इवैक्यूएट करेंगे? जैसे फ्रांस में तो उन्होंने चेन से कहाँ भेजा, वो जरूर प्लान होगा पहले. हमारे यहाँ क्या प्लानिंग है?
Yes.
So बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जो डॉट्स जो हैं, but guidelines are important because they give you the broad idea how to go about it. And it is unfortunate that कि 40 या for that matter पूरे कंट्री में केवल 2 नेशनल म्यूजियम में ही या म्यूजियम में ही हमारा डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान है. In fact, it should have been over.
Absolutely. And regarding, you are talking about the community, most of the students sitting there, I think they are from the architecture. यही ना? देखिए इसी को कम्युनिटी मान लेते हैं. गांव में क्यों जाते हैं, ट्रेडिशनल और रिमोट एरियाज में क्यों जाते हैं? यदि ये कम्युनिटी है तो जितने म्यूजियम्स में डिस्प्ले होते हैं, अर्थक्वेक में, फायर में, उन डिस्प्लेज की सेफ्टी कैसे की जाए? If we are making the disaster management plan of a museum, this is the community they can help. You are talking about the Maki, he is a friend of mine, and we were part of the Bihar Museum because when it was making in. So each and every aspect were discussed, and architects तो वो बैकबोन है जो इसको डीएम प्लान बनाने में सहायता करेगी. डिस्प्ले कैसा हो, कैसे निकल के भागने का रास्ता बने, कैसे वहाँ स्टोरेज हो कि वहाँ से हमें ट्रांसफ़र करने में आधे घंटे में हम सारा सामान ट्रांसफ़र करें, उसके लिए क्या क्या इक्विपमेंट होनी चाहिए। तो कम्युनिटी यही तो है। हम कौन सी कम्युनिटी की बात करते हैं?
So with the same community, once 20 years before, I was also part of the same community as a student. When I was a student, we were not having a subject of disaster management as an architecture. We were not having a subject of conservation. We were not having a subject of vernacular architecture. So in 20 years down the line, now there are with the COA inputs of the mandatory things, and even like establishment of such centers here, this is how where India is moving ahead. And especially today we are still 2017. We are talking about these guidelines. Until there's a long way to take it further to the community and to the practice, this thing. And this is where I can see that when you say the connecting dots, I think in these dots, academic is one dot, the community is one dot, the organizations of one. How to bring them together itself is a bigger task right now. And how to link academics, as you rightly said, it is not about whatever the thesis. In fact, museums, there are some people who are working on museums, Bhuj Museum के ऊपर ही काम कर रहे हैं कुछ लोग. So they are working on it. But the academic orientation, they say they have to design a museum and get out of this. But how to integrate the disaster planning of this, and to really for them to experience, okay, if something happens, how as an architect, how we can facilitate that. That is where this kind of platforms we are looking, that students should get trained in this. And that is where even in this workshop also we thought about, providing certain hands-on trainings, how we understand some buildings, the condition mappings, and that's very important, that's where the curriculum change,
एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल देता हूँ इसके लिए. जैसे म्यूजियम है हमारे बगल में, यही म्यूजियम है मान लेते हैं, तो आसपास लोग रहते भी हैं ना, तो म्यूजियम फ्रेंड्स क्लब बना लेते हैं. बनाने में क्या जाता है, म्यूजियम तो जाते हैं, रोज देखते हैं आंखों के सामने, एक क्लब बन गया. अब पास पड़ोस को एजुकेट करने की जरूरत है कि व्हाई यू शुड बी मेंबर ऑफ दिस क्लब, बिकॉज दे विल बी द मोस्ट रिस्पॉन्सिबल पीपल व्हेन एनीथिंग हैपेंस. तो इस तरह से एक क्लब बनता है, ऐसे हजारों क्लब बन जाएंगे. गाइडलाइंस इसी के लिए हैं. हमें थोड़ा अपना नैरेटिव चेंज करना पड़ेगा और पर्सपेक्टिव चेंज करने पड़ेंगे, सोचना पड़ेगा. बहुत इजी भी है, बहुत मुश्किल भी है. गवर्नमेंट करेगी तो गवर्नमेंट बहुत स्ट्रांग होती है और डंडा से पीटती भी है, वो नहीं हो पाएगा. हम खुद बना के आगे बढ़े तो बहुत कुछ बना सकते हैं. वो फ्रेंड्स होंगे तो सबका इन्वॉल्वमेंट होगा, और किसी इमरजेंसी में सबसे पहले वो आ जाएंगे बचाने के लिए, और ये करेंगे. जब तक फायर ब्रिगेड आएगी, जब तक NDRF आएगी, तब तक काम हो जाएगा.
और सबसे बड़ी चीज़ क्या है कि हर एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट में एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट अथॉरिटी होता है, headed by
हर जगह.
वो कैन यू थिंक ऑफ अ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान ऑफ ताजमहल विदाउट गेटिंग इंटीग्रेटेड विद द डिस्ट्रिक्ट आगरा? आगरा का जो डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान होगा वो जरूर इनकम्पास करता होगा ताजमहल के भी डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान को. कहीं कोई दुर्घटना हो, कोई डिजास्टर होता है, हॉस्पिटल में कहाँ जाएंगे, वो स्टोरेज कहाँ होगा, कैसे हम इवैक्यूएट करेंगे, ये सारी चीज़ें हैं ब्रॉडर फ्रेमवर्क में. डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट जो आगरा डिस्ट्रिक्ट का होगा उससे इंटीग्रेट होगा. सो that answers your question.
Yeah.
That every district has important and very very important outstanding ये सब प्रॉपर्टीज होती हैं. हर एक शहर में, हर एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट में अर्बन लोकेलिटीज है जिसमें आदमी टू सेव द लाइफ एंड प्रॉपर्टी, ये तो है, ये तो कॉमन है सबका. बट उसके अलावा देर आर सर्टन मच इम्पॉर्टेंट प्रायोरिटाइज आइटम्स, लाल किला जैसे हमने कहा या ताजमहल कहा, ये सब के तो हर एक का इंटीग्रेशन होना बहुत ज़रूरी है. एंड दैट इज़ द जॉब ऑफ द डिस्ट्रिक्ट डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट अथॉरिटी. Every district has a plan, and that plan should encompass all the little bit of plans like IIT Roorkee, for example. If you make a plan for IIT Roorkee, it should come under the district management plan also.
Right.
So that is how we integrate.
मैं इसे और थोड़ा सा दो लाइन बताता हूँ. डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान जब भी बनता है तो दो तरह का बनता है. एक तो जो आप इंडिविजुअली बनाते हैं, लेट्स से कि आपको IIT रुड़की का बनाना है, लेट्स से, तो ये ऑन साइट डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान बनेगा जो आप बनवाएंगे। गुड माई पॉइंट। लेकिन ऐसा नहीं है कि जब आप प्लान बनाते हैं तो आप अपना प्लान बना करके अपने डीडीएमए में सबमिट करवाते हैं, जो ओपी सिंह जी साहब ने कहा, डिस्ट्रिक्ट डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट अथॉरिटी में उसको सबमिट करवाते हैं। तो वो इनपुट उनको मिल जाता है। उनके पास क्या है, उनके पास ऑफ साइट प्लान है। उनका काम है ऑफ साइट प्लान बनाना पूरे रुड़की का, पूरे रुड़की डिस्ट्रिक्ट का। उसमें वो क्या करते हैं, आपके इस प्लान को उसमें इंटीग्रेट कर देते हैं। उससे उनको क्या होता है कि आपके पास क्या रिसोर्स है ये भी पता चल जाता है। आप केवल आपके जो बच्चे हैं, मतलब ये वनरेबल भी हैं और ये असेट भी तो है ना। आप लोग इतने बड़े बड़े स्कॉलर्स हैं, प्रोफेसर हैं, तो आप लोग असेट्स भी तो है डिस्ट्रिक्ट के। तो एज ए मतलब प्रोसेस तो यही है जो गाइडलाइन बोलता है कि सब अगर हम जो डॉट्स कनेक्ट कर देते हैं तो हम ही रिसोर्स है और हम ही वनरेबल है। और अभी आपने एक चीज़ और जो पीछे कहा था उसका मैं एक लाइन में जवाब देता हूँ कि उसका एग्जाम्पल मेरे पास एक स्कूल का है कि एक स्कूल के प्रिंसिपल को वहाँ उसके बच्चे, उसका एक स्टूडेंट की मम्मी ने कहा कि भाई मैं अपने बच्चे को आपके यहाँ अब तभी पढ़ाऊँगी जब आप अपने स्कूल का डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान बना लेंगे। जो भी आप कह रहे थे कम्युनिटी की तरफ से कि स्कूल के जो मदर थी उस बच्चे की, वो गई प्रिंसिपल के पास, और ये हुमायूं रोड दिल्ली में वो स्कूल है, और उसने कहा कि आप अपने स्कूल का डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान बनवाइए, मैं अपने बच्चे को यहाँ पढ़ाती हूँ। तो उसने कहा कि जी हमारे पास फायर का एनओसी है। बोला नहीं है, एनओसी से नहीं चलेगा, डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान है कि नहीं ये बताइए। तो बोला नहीं है। तो उनका पेरेंट्स एसोसिएशन था, उसमें उसने इस बात को कहा और दे फोर्स्ड स्कूल को। ये बहुत बढ़िया एग्जाम्पल कि कम्युनिटी क्या कर सकती है और कम्युनिटी का एक बच्चा क्या कर सकता है, और आपके पास तो 5000 हैं। तो आप क्या कर सकते हैं कि स्कूल मैनेजमेंट जो है वो बिल्कुल हरी में आ गया और उसने गूगल में ढूंढा, फिर मुझे पाया और हम लोगों ने उनका प्लान बना करके लागू किया। तो मैंने उससे पूछा इतना हरी में क्यों हो, क्योंकि हम लोग करने में 20-22 दिन लगाते हैं। तो उसने बताया साहब ऐसा ऐसा मामला है, वो पूरा खराब है, इसको जल्दी करके सबसे पहले प्रायोरिटी पर बना दीजिए आप। और कम्युनिटी की एक बात और सुनिए आप, जो स्कूल की बात कर रहे हैं, हमारे बच्चे का एक पेंसिल भी छूट जाता है स्कूल में, वाटर बोतल भी छूट जाता है स्कूल में, हम डायरी में लिख के भेजते हैं, फ़ोन करके टीचर को बताते हैं बच्चे का जी वाटर बोतल छूट गया, कल वापस भेज देना। अब आप लोग इतने सारे हैं, सर ने सही कहा कि ये भी तो एक कम्युनिटी है और इतना ब्राइट कम्युनिटी है। आप लोग बताएं कितने लोग आप लोगों ने किसी अपने स्कूल से पूछा है कि भाई हमारे बच्चा जिस स्कूल में पढ़ता है, आपका बच्चा जहाँ पढ़ता है, आपका डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान बना है कि नहीं बना है? जिस होटल में आप जा कर के ठहरते हैं, आपने पूछा है क्या कि उसका डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट प्लान बना है? जिस कॉलेज में पढ़ते हैं, जिस यूनिवर्सिटी में पढ़ते हैं। तो कम्युनिटी दो है, एक तो गवर्नमेंट ऊपर से पुश कर रही है ना, पॉलिसी बना रही है, एक्ट बना रही है, और बाकी आप लोग एक एडिशन भी कर रहे हैं कि भाई सेमिनार करा रहे हैं, वर्कशॉप करा रहे हैं। अगर कम्युनिटी भी नीचे से पुश करे, जैसे उस स्कूल में हुआ, तो सारे स्कूलों का बन जाएगा। हमारा ड्राइवर भी स्कूल से आया है, मेरे कलेक्टर साहब भी स्कूल से आए, मैं भी स्कूल से आया हूँ, आप भी स्कूल से आए हैं, ये भी स्कूल से आए हैं। तो क्या होगा, कम्युनिटी ही सारा एजुकेटेड हो जाएगा। वी आर द पार्ट ऑफ द कम्युनिटी। हु इज द कम्युनिटी? आई एम द पार्ट ऑफ कम्युनिटी एंड यू आर द पार्ट ऑफ कम्युनिटी। तो हमें सब कुछ नीचे से अगर आप पकड़ ले, क्योंकि चलिए ठीक है, वो ऊपर तो अब जो लोग निकल गए वो निकल गए एक एज के बाद, लेकिन अभी जिन्हें हम पकड़ सकते हैं, सही बात तो ये कि हमारी आंखें ऐसी हो गई डिसास्टर मैनेजमेंट में रह करके कि हम शादी के पंडाल में भी जाते हैं तो पहले ये देखते हैं कि भागने का रास्ता किधर से है, आग लगेगा तो किधर से भागेंगे। तो दिस इज द दूल्हा दुल्हन को बाद में देखते हैं। मैं आपको भी कहता हूँ कि अगर इस तरह का पुश हो ना, ये मैंडेटरी हो जाए कि शादी के कार्ड में आए भाई उसमें इवैक्यूएशन प्लान लगा है, मतलब ऐसा भी लिखा है, जो 20 चीज़ें लिखा रहता है, पंडाल जलने में 1.5 मिनट लगता है, केवल 1.5 मिनट, क्योंकि सिंथेटिक मटेरियल का होता है, 1.5 मिनट में जल जाता है वो। तो कार्ड पे ये भी लिखा हुआ होना चाहिए, अगर कोई कहे भाई ये भी बना दो कि इसमें इवैक्यूएशन मैप लगा हुआ है। एक सेल्फ ग्लो इवैक्यूएशन मैप कितना जरूरी है, ये तो तब पता लगता है जब कहीं पे डिसास्टर हो जाता है, क्योंकि धुआं में आपको कुछ दिखता तो है नहीं।
Thank you, sir. Sir, I have one question on the same, because you mentioned about integrating the district management system. Especially, I want to ask Dr. Manoj Kumar Saxena ji, because we were all part of this heritage bylaws, have been associated with him in different aspect. Because many of these heritage sites are now, they are the NMA, National Monument Authority, is preparing the heritage bylaws. and especially in one of the annexures, they relate with the bylaws of the planning authority. So our understanding in many cases, especially, planning authority prepares a master plan, and where the heritage component is not rightly pointed out in the planning documents. In fact, you can't even, sometimes there's a missing part also. And also the buffer zones. Because the people who are living around these places in the historic sites, whether they are aware of this buffer zone or not, the prohibited and the regulated zones, whether they are aware of it, first of all, whether I'm falling within that or not, because the planning document doesn't show that. Because whenever I am an individual, I want to build a house in that particular near to the vicinity, maybe he may not be aware of NMA, but the only process is he apply for the planning permissions. But the planning document, sometimes, there's a certain heritage component which is missing at all. So what is your experience with, how do you think there is a mismatch between the heritage and the planning authorities?
For ASA monuments, we have 100 meter and 200 meter. Then 300 meter means 100 meter from the periphery of the monument, that is the prohibited area. But only उसमें कोई construction नहीं हो सकता है. And second, the regulated area from beyond 100 meter for further 200 meter, it's a 300 meter all around the monument. It's a regulated area. In that, construction can happen and with the permission of competent authority. तो वो NMA की permission के बाद वहाँ बना सकते हैं. And जो हमारा हेरिटेज मैनेजमेंट प्लान और जो हमारा ये बना रहे हैं हम लोग बायलॉज जो बना रहे हैं, उसमें भी हम लोग हाइट का रेस्ट्रिक्शन और कितना दूर तक हम लोग उनको परमिशन देंगे बनाने के लिए, वो सारा हम ये कर रहे हैं. प्लस उसमें क्योंकि 100 मीटर फ्रॉम द पेरिफेरी ऑफ मॉन्यूमेंट, अगर हम किसी छोटी टाउन में या किसी गांव में लेते हैं, उत्तराखंड के अगर हम कॉन्टेक्स्ट में लें तो पूरा गांव ही ख़त्म हो जाता है. 300 मीटर का ऑल अराउंड अगर हम लेते हैं तो उसमें पूरा गांव ही चला जाता है, तो कोई कंस्ट्रक्शन ही नहीं हो सकता है. लेकिन लोग कंस्ट्रक्शन कर रहे हैं और इलीगल कंस्ट्रक्शन हो रहा है. वी हैव AMSR एक्ट बट वी डोंट हैव द इम्प्लीमेंटेशन अथॉरिटी. And we are depending on the district authority to implement this one plan and restriction. But बहुत सारा जगह में ये प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है. मतलब प्लेन में भी ये प्रॉब्लम होता है और पहाड़ में तो हो ही रहा है कि लोग बना रहे हैं मकान और every day there is a mushrooming the buildings around the monument. तो उसके लिए हमने अवेयरनेस प्रोग्राम चलाते हैं और उसके साथ साथ हमने वर्कशॉप भी कराए हैं जिसमें डिस्ट्रिक्ट जजेस को बुला के उनको अवेयर किया है कम्युनिटी को कि उसमें कि 100 मीटर इज कम्प्लीटली बैन एरिया, उसमें कोई कंस्ट्रक्शन नहीं हो सकता है. बहुत सारे एडवोकेट्स हमको चिट्ठियाँ लिख देते हैं ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ देयर क्लाइंट, तो उनको भी हम ये समझाते हैं कि ये आप ठीक है, क्लाइंट्स को वो पैसा एक्सट्रैक्ट करने के लिए तो वो बोल देता है हम आपका ये करवा देंगे, लेकिन उसमें कोई भी परमिशन नहीं दे सकता है. तो वो कॉम्पिटेंट अथॉरिटी को पावर ही नहीं है उसमें परमिशन दे. तो फिर भी कंस्ट्रक्शन हो रहे हैं. अब उस कंस्ट्रक्शन को रोकने का पावर ASI के पास नहीं है, वो डिस्ट्रिक्ट अथॉरिटी पे हम लोग डिपेंड कर जाते हैं. तो वहाँ पे ये वी आर लैकिंग इन दैट.
No, that is the exact question I am saying. What you are saying is absolutely fine. So the 100 and 200 meters के जो buffer zone आप जो बता रहे हैं, whether the planning authority, when they are preparing the master plan of any city, are they positioning that particular zone?
Yeah.
You know, are they?
हाँ, उसके लिए हम लोगों ने 100 मीटर पे स्टोन्स लगाए हैं.
Okay, अच्छा, you have the markers of that.
100 मीटर में जाके मार्क लगाए हैं.
Okay.
और उसके बाद फर्दर 300 मीटर में जाके मार्क लगाए हैं जहाँ रेगुलेटेड जोन खत्म होता है.
Okay, but that is considered in the planning document. Okay, right. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
कई बार क्या होता है कि सब जानते कंस्ट्रक्शन की ज़रूरत है
हम्म,
और यहाँ पे कंस्ट्रक्शन की परमिशन नहीं मिलेगी, उसके बावजूद भी लोग परमिशन के लिए अप्लाई करते हैं, कुछ जगह में वो डिनाई होते होते तब तक वो बना देते हैं। कुछ लोग बना लेते हैं मकान, कुछ लोग शुरू करते हैं। अब आजकल हुआ है कि कॉम्पिटेंट अथॉरिटी ने बोला है कि जब तक ऐसा ही ये नहीं करेगा, उनको ये परमिशन ये नहीं बताएगा कि उसको इनको परमिशन देने में कोई ऐतराज़ नहीं है, या जो कोई कंस्ट्रक्शन उन्होंने किया तो हम उनको नोटिस दे देते हैं। तो नोटिस का जब तक ये ना हो जाए, उनका उन्होंने जैसे डिमोलिश कर दिया जो बनाया, तब उनको ऑनलाइन अप्लाई कर सकते हैं, अदरवाइज नहीं।
सर, हाउ अबाउट द ओनरशिप फॉर एग्जांपल?
ओनरशिप आपका हो सकता है।
नहीं, आई एम सेइंग इफ द हेरिटेज प्रॉपर्टी इज लाइंग इन ए प्राइवेट ओनरशिप,
तब भी आपका प्राइवेट ओनरशिप हो सकती है, लेकिन वहाँ पे भी जो भी कोई डेवलपमेंट वर्क होगा या कंजर्वेशन का काम होगा वो एएसआई ही करेगी।
ओके,
वो ओनर भी नहीं, कुछ नहीं कर सकता, एक ईंट भी नहीं लगा सकता है owner।
okay. So within that prohibited zone, they can. Okay. So imagine if that is in the heart of a city. Let's say they found a new elements in the heart of a city which has a very rich economical value. So in that case also, the rule is simple, right? Yeah. Okay.
Delhi is the best example. Delhi is the capital of the country.
Right.
We have the Jantar Mantar.
So please.
Jantar Mantar is a famous place. Everybody knows that. I knew that if you have any person have the experience of Jantar Mantar, 20 years ago, there was no building around that. The one hotel came up and one office of the New Delhi Municipal Corporation cropped up. And you know what is the face of that. You have the Siri Fort, and around the Siri Fort you have the, as I've said, that human is the most disastrous than the natural calamity and the other things. Example, Tughlaqabad is a fort in Delhi and occupied by the resident. No rules are applicable. No rules are applicable. Every day you have the building. First day you have the building, one floor, and next morning you will say that apartment is coming up. So Samarath ke Tulsidas has said, Samarath ke nahi dos gusai. So if you implement with soul, heart and the law, it is good. If you have the just कि हो ठीक है, नियम है, तो और हमारे प्रसिद्ध कवि अशोक वाजपेयी जी कहा करते हैं कि रूल्स आर मेड फॉर फूल्स। वो जब तक आप नहीं जागरूक होंगे तो वो थोड़ी जगह।
Thank you, sir. Sir, just on a concluding note, I'll be asking one last question to all the panelists. Maybe each of you can give your views just briefly on it so that we can conclude this session. So, till now we have discussed about a certain gap in what is there on the documents and what is there in the practice, you know, whether it is a guideline, whether it is a protocol, whether it is bylaw preparation, or whether it is, you know, all these things. So because we are here at the scientific community where certain work is done, and you are coming from the practice and the policy process of it. And what is, I mean, how do we really have to collaborate, especially in taking it to the bottom-up process, you know, to engaging the communities? Because communities, in all these discussions, communities are not part of it, because whenever we meet, last month there were some communities here, they were here, actually we called some few communities. One of the things strongly which they mentioned to me was, so many policies are made in Dehradun or Delhi, we are not engaged. This is something which they uniquely represented, you know, in one of the other projects workshop. So this is where I see, as a collectively, how we should go ahead in this part. What are the, you can say, like, you know, key steps that we should start with in the next 2-3 years? How should we reach? Yeah.
मैं एक छोटा सा उदाहरण दूंगा, सिर्फ 1 मिनट दूंगा। देखिए, आप लोग जानते हैं एक लियोनार्डो विंची की पेंटिंग है मोनालिसा, सुने ही होंगे आप लोग, देखे भी हो सकते हैं। लूव्र फ्रांस में है, पेरिस में। तो उसको देखने के लिए हर साल करीब 8 मिलियन लोग आते हैं, और हमारे इंडिया का जो फुटफॉल है फॉरेन टूरिज्म का, वो अराउंड 8 मिलियन। तो एक पेंटिंग वर्सेस एक कंट्री की फॉरेन फुटफॉल। आप अंदाजा लगाइए तो ये बताना भी कि हमारी ये विरासत कितनी कीमती है, इससे भी थोड़ा एहसास होगा लोगों को। आप लोगों को भी रियलाइज होना चाहिए। जब न्यूयॉर्क जा रही थी वो पेंटिंग एग्जिबिट होने के लिए, तो ये हुआ कि इंश्योरेंस, भाई चलो इंश्योरेंस का तो हो जाएगा, कैसे ले जाओगे भाई, प्लेन जाएगी, ठीक है, और प्लेन ब्लास्ट हो गया तो हम तो पेंटिंग को तो नहीं नुकसान कर सकते। चलो जी बॉक्स बनाओ ऐसा जो ब्लास्ट का असर ना हो, फिर समुद्र में कहीं गिर के खो गई तो। एक पेंटिंग की वैल्यू इतना करते हैं लोग। हमारे यहाँ क्या विरासत है, नेशनल म्यूजियम कभी विजिट करिए तो आपको पता लगेगा, और ऐसे हजारों म्यूजियम हैं जिसमें कुछ न कुछ अभूतपूर्व है। हर काल की, अशोका डेस्टिनी की, मौर्य काल की, गुप्त काल की, क्यों संजीव जी, तो हम उसकी वैल्यू नहीं समझते हैं। हम अपने घर में भी बहुत सारी चीजें होती है जिसकी वैल्यू नहीं समझते हैं। तो हम एक अपने पास पड़ोस को ये भी बताएं कि ये वैल्यूएबल है और इसको बचाना कितना जरूरी है, वो बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है। हमारे यहाँ तो म्यूजियम तो देश की नाक होती है, और म्यूजियम की ही क्यों बात करें, हेरिटेज प्रॉपर्टी की बात कर रहे हैं हम, टेम्पल की भी बात करें ना, टेम्पल आर्किटेक्चर है हमारे यहाँ किले हैं, हमारे यहाँ ये सब चीजें खत्म हो जाए तो इंडिया बचे, कहीं भी क्या बचेगा। वो तो फॉरेन के लोग तो अपनी पुरानी बिल्डिंग्स को बचा बचा के हेरिटेज बना दिए, जबकि उसमें कुछ है नहीं। हमारे यहाँ तो सचमुच मुगल कालीन, ब्रिटिश, उसके पहले टेम्पल आर्किटेक्चर और तमाम समय के साथ चीजें बनी हैं। तो मैं समझता हूँ कि उसकी वैल्यू है, उसकी रिस्पेक्ट हमें करनी चाहिए, वही हमारी विरासत है। तो इससे भी थोड़ी अवेयरनेस हो। मैं इतना ही कहूँगा, आगे।
थैंक यू सर।
मैं ये कहूँगा कि सर जैसे सारे स्टूडेंट्स हैं, जैसे आपने जब शुरुआत की तो पूछा कि कितने लोगों ने म्यूज़ियम देखे हैं, तो बहुत कम ये लोगों के हाथ उठे। तो मैं चाहूँगा कि आप लोग कम से कम आसपास जो भी म्यूज़ियम हो, चाहे हरिद्वार का गुरुकुल कांगड़ी में म्यूज़ियम है वो तो है, या देहरादून में कुछ म्यूज़ियम्स हैं FRI वगैरह में, वो देखें। और या कभी हमारे यहाँ जागेश्वर में एक बहुत सुंदर सा बहुत कम्पैक्ट म्यूज़ियम है, वो आप जाके देखें। कभी जो पहाड़ में जाएंगे वहाँ आपको रियल में पता चलेगा कि स्पेस भी बहुत कम है पहाड़ होने की वजह से, और कम्युनिटी का इन्वॉल्वमेंट, और वहाँ पे साथ साथ जो अर्बनाइजेशन हो रहा है, जो पब्लिक अवेयरनेस आजकल बढ़ रही है, चाहे वो इंटरनेट की वजह से हो या मीडिया की वजह से हो, बहुत सारे लोगों को जागेश्वर के बारे में पता चल रहा है और लोग जागेश्वर जा रहे हैं। और वहाँ जा रहे हैं तो वहाँ पे डे बाय डे नए नए होटल और ये सारे डेवलप होते जा रहे हैं, जिसकी वजह से आपको रहने की फैसिलिटी तो मिल रही है, लेकिन साथ साथ आपका एक हैजार्डस ये बढ़ते जा रहा है दिन भर दिन। तो वो सारी चीज़ें हुआ है। और ऐसे ही जो हमारा जोशीमठ में हुआ है, जो डेली वहाँ मल्टी स्टोरी बिल्डिंग्स बन गए, लोग आसपास के गांव से भी आके वहाँ बस गए, वो जो कैपेसिटी बेयरिंग, लोड बेयरिंग कैपेसिटी जो होती है एरिया की, वो उससे ऊपर चले जाने लग गया लोगों का ये। तो उससे वहाँ पे काफ़ी जो डिज़ास्टर हो रहा है वो आप सभी जान रहे हैं, डेली पर पढ़ रहे हैं, 1-1.5-2 महीना से तो पेपर में डेली आ रहा है। तो ये चीज़ें भी ध्यान में रखें और साइट पे जाएं, तो एक सेंस ऑफ बिलोंगिंग आप में अपने आप डेवलप होगा जब आप वहाँ जाएंगे, किसी म्यूज़ियम में जाएंगे। और वहाँ पे उत्तराखंड में है तो उत्तराखंड की विरासत को आप देखिए, तब आपको पता चलेगा कि कितना समृद्ध हमारा उत्तराखंड का विरासत थी। या कहीं भी इसी एरिया में जाएंगे तो आपको ये सब देखने के लिए मिलेगा। और पुरातत्व तो आप ही के लिए है, बाकी वो हम लोगों का तो काम है उसको सिर्फ संभालना और आप लोगों को हैंड ओवर करना।
You know, this basically brings down to a very important thing, that how do we generate interest in museums. This is very important, you know, right from childhood. if one comes to know the importance of museums, in fact schools वगैरह में हम लोग conducted tours तो ले जाते हैं museums में बहुत सारे जगहों पे, लेकिन say for example दिल्ली का है, दिल्ली में कितने बच्चे हैं जो सारी heritage sites को जानते हैं? हो सकता है broadly वो रेड फोर्ट को जानते हों या सीरी फोर्ट का उनको मालूम हो, बट इतने छोटे छोटे इतने ज़्यादा हमारे पास कल्चरल हेरिटेज हैं, साइट्स हैं, उतने बहुत मुश्किल है जाना। इनफैक्ट वहाँ का बच्चा 20-20, 25-25 साल तक रह जाता है, लेकिन वो दिल्ली के बारे में नहीं जानता है। उसमें हम समझते हैं कि एक जो 21st सेंचुरी का जो एक वो है कि हम लोग इन्फॉर्मेशन को नॉलेज समझने लगे हैं, कि हम जो भी इन्फॉर्मेशन लेते हैं वो हमारा नॉलेज है, जबकि नॉलेज गोज मच बियॉन्ड इन्फॉर्मेशन। You get information through internet, you get information through WhatsApp and all that. इसी तरह जिस तरह connections को हम relationship समझने लगे हैं, you send a WhatsApp message and you think that you are related to him. I don't know, this is a new trend which is coming up. एक थोड़ी बहुत दिक्कत हम सोचते हैं म्यूजियम और आर्कियोलॉजिकल सर्वे ऑफ इंडिया से भी है कि वो लोग उन लोगों को थोड़ा और इंफॉर्मेटिव बनाने की ज़रूरत है। जैसे कोई अगर हम कल्चरल हेरिटेज साइट पे जाते हैं तो हमें किसी लोकल गाइड की ज़रूरत ना पड़े। Why should I depend on local guide who charges too much? Maybe, I don't know, must be charging too much. तो एक गरीब आदमी के लिए, और गरीब नहीं, एक ऐसे आदमी के लिए जो देखना चाहता है ये सब हेरिटेज साइट जो है वो इट्स फ्री ऑफ कॉस्ट फॉर अस और मिनिमम कॉस्ट। तो हमें लगता है कि आर्कियोलॉजिकल सर्वे ऑफ इंडिया को थोड़ा इंफॉर्मेटिव ज़्यादा अब कैसे करेंगे, दे मस्ट बी डूइंग सम रिसर्च। आई कांट ब्लेम देम बिकॉज दे हैव बीन डूइंग ब्यूटीफुल जॉब, और जो भी प्रिजर्व करके रख रहे हैं वही बहुत बड़ी बात है, अपने आप में बहुत बड़ी चीज़ है। हम लोग क्रिटिसाइज कर देते हैं किसी को भी, लेकिन उसके उनके अंदर जो चीज़ें हो रही हैं, प्रोसेस हो रही है, वो हम कभी रियलाइज़ नहीं करते हैं। सो आई गिव फुल क्रेडिट टू ASI फॉर डूइंग इट, बट हमारे एज ए लेमैन आई थिंक कि कुछ इन्फॉर्मेशन और दी जा सकती हैं, डिस्प्ले की जा सकती हैं, और अवेयरनेस जो है बहुत बड़ी चीज़ है, पब्लिक एजुकेशन एंड अवेयरनेस। हम समझते हैं उसी से सब चीज़ होगा, चाहे वो डिज़ास्टर मैनेजमेंट की प्लान कहें या इनकलकेटिंग द डिज़ायर टू विजिट एनी म्यूज़ियम। मैं समझता हूँ कि वो बहुत ज़रूरी है कि हम अपने विरासत को समझें।
सर, हमारे ASI के जितने भी मॉन्यूमेंट्स हैं, ज़्यादातर मॉन्यूमेंट्स में हम लोग ने कल्चरल नोटिस बोर्ड वहाँ पे लगाते हैं, उसको CNBs बोलते हैं। प्रोटेक्शन नोटिस बोर्ड होता है जिसका सिर्फ आम पब्लिक के लिए सिर्फ महत्व ये होता है कि हाँ एक ये प्रोटेक्टेड मॉन्यूमेंट है भारतीय पुरातत्व सर्वेक्षण का, लेकिन उसका साथ एक CNB हम लगाते हैं जो कल्चर नोटिस बोर्ड होता है, और उसमें उस मॉन्यूमेंट के बारे में या पर्टिकुलर एक स्ट्रक्चर के बारे में डिटेल होती है। लेकिन अभी जो हम लोग जो ट्रेंड देख रहे हैं, जो मोबाइल वाला, लोग आते हैं वो स्मार्टफोन से फ़ोटो खींच लेते हैं, उसका घर में जाके पढ़ेंगे, और वो कभी दिन आता नहीं है पढ़ने का। वो पढ़ने की आदत डालेंगे तो आप समझेंगे उस मॉन्यूमेंट को। एक किसी हमारे ग्रुप में किसी ने एक फ़ोटो भेजा कि साहब देखिए ये कुतुब मीनार में जो ये कुतुबुल इस्लाम मॉस्क है, वहाँ उसको देखिए इसमें हिंदू एलिमेंट्स हैं और ये है मैंने, और इसमें ASI को कुछ पता नहीं है, और ये वो बहुत सारा उन्होंने व्हाट्सएप, आजकल व्हाट्सएप यूनिवर्सिटी चल रही है तो उसमें उन्होंने लिख दिया। फिर मैंने उनको काउंटर किया कि देखिए आप ये तो वहाँ सीधे सीधे लिखा है कि उसका कल्चर नोटिस बोर्ड आप पढ़िए, उसमें लिखा है कि वो 27 हिंदू और जैन टेम्पल को तोड़ के उसके मलबे से ये मस्जिद बनाई गई, तो वो वहाँ पे लिखा हुई है उसमें, तो वो आप कल्चर नोटिस बोर्ड कभी पढ़े नहीं, हम तो सिर्फ फॉरवर्ड कर दिए थे। तो उन्होंने कहा फॉरवर्ड कर दिए थे, भाई ऐसे नहीं फॉरवर्ड करिए, ये आते चीज़ें आपको इन्फॉर्मेशन है उसको पहले ये पब्लिक में डोमेन में डालने से पहले उसको कम से कम वेरीफाई कर लें अपने सोर्सेज से, तब से वो हमारे फ्रेंड हो गए हैं। वो कहीं जाते हैं तो फिर पूछते हैं उनको।
थैंक यू सर।
देखिए क्योंकि ऑलरेडी 3 लोग इस पे बोल चुके हैं, तो मुझे समझ में आता है कि राइट फॉर्म ऑफ द कम्युनिकेशन, और कम्युनिकेशन भी मतलब कम्युनिटी कम्युनिकेशन, कि कम्युनिटी से को जो ज़रूरी है वो बताना चाहिए। अगर कम्युनिटी को पता हो कि ये हजार्ड है, या मेरे वजह से इस मोनूमेंट को ये नुकसान हो सकता है, तो आई एम श्योर कि चलिए 100% कम्युनिटी नहीं, लेकिन यह है कि 90% कम्युनिटी वो एक्टिविटी नहीं करेगा कि जिससे कि उस मोन्यूमेंट को नुकसान हो जाए। तो पहला बात ये कि राइट फॉर्म ऑफ द कम्युनिकेशन होना बहुत ज़रूरी है, सही तरीके से कम्युनिकेशन हो। दूसरा क्या है कि कम्युनिकेशन का मतलब ये भी नहीं है कि जो हम लोग समझते हैं कि मैंने आपको कुछ कह दिया और आपने मुझे कह दिया, ये कम्युनिकेशन है। नहीं, ये कम्युनिकेशन नहीं है। कम्युनिकेशन ये है कि सामने वाले बंदे को क्या बताना था वो मैं बता पाया कि नहीं बता पाया, मैं उसके भाषा में उसे बता पाया कि जिस भाषा को वो समझेगा, और फिर जो उसने कहा अपने भाषा में वो क्या मैं समझ पाया क्या। तो अभी जो इन बातों से लग रहा है कि हमारे बीच में, तो अथॉरिटी के बीच में और कम्युनिटी के बीच में एक बहुत ही बड़ा टेबल रखा हुआ है कि उधर से वो लिख के देता है तब हम पढ़ते हैं, और हम जो लिख के देते हैं तब वो पढ़ता है। तो ये ना हो, एक राइट फॉर्म ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन हो, आई एम श्योर कि 99% प्रॉब्लम जो है सोल्व हो जाएगा।
Thank you, sir. Please.
One is we are talking from in the morning itself, that awareness. Second is interaction. Third is communication. So if you put these three things in your mind, practically and theoretically we are every lecture we are giving these three, but in the practical way, if you think do this, and I am giving the example, we have the best example in the world. First example I am giving you, India is country of sentimental country, though that sentiments doesn't there sentimentals on the platform of the religion, reason, linguistic, and the casteist. I'm giving you the four example in the terms of the monument and heritage. First is Somnath Temple, Gujarat. A gentleman, and I don't quote the name, he was a Muslim. Obviously, it is a temple of the Shiva, destroyed by the Muslim invaders. He was not allowed to work initially. The gentleman who was in the helms of affair, like the Manoj is here as a superintending archaeologist, he was there as a superintending archaeologist. He said, it is a sick, it is a patient for me. I'm a doctor. Would you want a treatment of this patient, or you want me to identify myself, my identity as what I am in the society? The local community received the message that it is a matter between the patient and the doctor, so doctor is allowed to treat the patient, and how it was treated. It is the best example. Second example I am giving you, that is in Jama Masjid. It is in Delhi, biggest maintained by the Archaeological Survey of India, owned by the trust, that is a private property, but maintained by. There they are not being allowed because ASI is not allowed to work other than what they think. But third example, we are also in the that is a Lucknow, that is a what you call it, Bara Imam Bara. People do allow them to work. So how they, and the fourth example, that is on record. What I'm quoting, it is on record. Fourth is a Puri temple. That is, Puri temple you have. No, I'm not talking about the Konark, Puri. And Puri is not a white pagoda because it's covered with a lime plaster. It was removed. And the officer in charge of the Archaeological Survey of India, those are health affairs, he belongs to a community supposed not to enter into temple. He again said the same theory what was said by in the Somnath, कि भाई हमें मत करने दो, हमको तुम घुसने मत दो, हम पूजा करने के लिए नहीं जा रहे. I want to clear this one. और उसका दूसरे दिन रिजल्ट आता है, कहा भगवान इसका देगा. वो भी बहुत बड़ा भक्त. He was also a devotee like Raidas. और वो crumble हो गया, एक portion of that crumble down. Then people think, अरे भगवान ने कहा, देखिए कम्युनिटी कैसे जुड़ता है. तो you have to censor. एक दूसरा हो गया, ये आदमी जो आया है हमारे हित के लिए आया है, तो विरोध नहीं. ये जो बैठा हुआ है, जो इन्होंने कहा कि बीच में टेबल डाली हुई है, हमने वो चीट देते हैं तो उधर से वो पढ़ते हैं, वो न्यूज़ रीडर नहीं होना हमने. We don't have a news reader. कि screen पर आ रहा है, we have to speak because I have a good voice. No, we have to communicate it. So it should go to the people. Exactly what happened. There was no murmuring after that in the maintenance of the Puri temple. I have given the example of Somnath. I have given you the Bara Imam Bara, and I have also given you the Jama Masjid. So you have 4 places. Community are sensitivity and sensibly involved. Some are negative, some are positive. It is onus owes by you. It is onus is on you to make them feel. Here is the doctor. Here is the doctor. Let him allow to treat the patients, and the patient, if patient will be treated properly, he will be fit and found, and it will be good for the community.
That's good.
So that is we have in the philosophy also. If you go for we have the perfect philosophy is sense of belongingness. Sense of belongingness. So this philosophy is very important. It should be a guiding force for us. It is not. देखिए 2 तरह की बात होती है हमारे यहाँ. एक होती है नौकरी, एक होता है सेवा. नौकरी में क्या होता है कि you are coming 10 to 5, taking the salary, taking the classes and go back. Don't care for. एक सेवा होता है कि मैं जो जानता हूँ मेरे बच्चे जाने और ये फिर अगले वाले को पढ़ाएं. तो ये जो ट्रेडिशन, इफ यू हैव द फ्लो, तभी माला बनती है. फूल तो फूल ही है. इफ यू मेक ए गार्लैंड, यू हैव टू स्टिच इट. So link is important. That is why I have shown a bridge. So that is you have to be light. और बुद्ध मैं समाप्त करता हूँ एक शब्द से बुद्ध के, अपो दीप भव. खुद ही दीप बन जाओ, वो दुनिया जगमगाए जाएगी. हम जागेंगे. और यहाँ का ही हरिद्वार का ही नारा है कि भगवान उनका आचार्य जी का कि हम सुधरेंगे जग सुधरेगा, हम बदलेंगे जग बदलेगा, हम जुड़ेंगे तुम जुड़ोगे. एक बार मैं आपको प्रणाम करूँगा, एक बार आप हमको नेग्लेक्ट करेंगे, दूसरी बार मैं भी प्रणाम करूँगा, तो एक बार रुकेंगे, तीसरी बार हमको स्नेह, अगर आप हमसे बड़े हैं तो स्नेह देंगे, और आप छोटे हैं तो हमें भी प्रणाम करेंगे. यही हमारी संतति है. एंड इफ प्रैक्टिकलिटी ऑफ दिस कम्युनिटी विच इज inherited by us for long generations, if we go in continuing that, then I will communicate the message, and the message will come to us, and this communication bridge will work to save our heritage, monuments and museums, and ultimately the culture in whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for all of you for your wonderful insights to our students, and it's really helpful for us. And I hope we are on time. Yes, we are on time. So first of all, I would like to request to give a big round of applause to all the plenary panelists. Thank you very much, sir. So I just want to introduce we'll now break for lunch for 1 hour, and then at sharp 2, please be here. So what we are planning to do at 2 o'clock is architect Purva Patil is going to demonstrate certain methods of documentation, because obviously we are not located right now in hills, but at least we have some cultural properties here. And I don't know how many of you know we have 2 museums in the campus. One is the Rock Museum, and another one is the Institute Archives. In the Institute Archives, we have even the Shakespeare's first folio is there, which we conserved. And we have the Indian Constitution and everything. Please do visit. So our plan is, 2 to 2:30, Purva Patil will be talking about some methods of how to document. And I'll be just adding upon a small 5-10 minutes work, which we did in the Barsu village near Gangotri. We documented that whole village. So what techniques, what methods we use for documentation. So because that is something, a takeaway for this process. And then what we'll do is we'll divide into 4 groups, okay? And I would request even the experts and other participants to please be part of it. We'll divide into 4 groups. And what we will do is we'll first go to Institute Archives. We'll walk down from here. And we'll see the Institute Archives. From there, we are going to distribute ourselves into 3 properties. So each of our faculty will be will be guiding you there. And for some properties, we were able to procure the drawings, the AutoCAD drawings and everything. We have taken the print of everything so that you will be able to do certain condition assessment. And trust me, one of the building is soon going to collapse. So it is your last opportunity to document that building. So So I think it is good to, it's already in a dilapidated situation. It's good to learn about mapping techniques and other things. So it's a good opportunity for you to document. And following that, even our students will continue working on further to make it a proper digital format. Thanks, yeah. Thank you very much. So we'll meet you after lunch. Yeah, so we'll break for lunch. So thank you very much. Sir.